friends, welcome back to Tales of Praxis, a streaming and analytical article series by With a Terrible Fate. WithATerribleFate.com is the only publication dedicated just to analyzing and trying to better appreciate and understand the storytelling of video games because we love it so much. I'm your host, Aaron Suduko, the founder of With a Terrible Fate, welcoming you to another adventure through Tales of Zestiria this Wednesday evening. Sorry to be starting a couple minutes late. Evie, my dog, unsurprisingly, had to go out right before the stream, and I'm sure she will send her best throughout our adventures here. I was also late because before that I was catching up with a dear friend of mine, a fellow philosophy graduate by the name of James, who, for those of you who are fans of Xenoblade and perhaps have cracked or are working through my basically digital book studying Xenoblade Chronicles 3, James was one of the invaluable people in my life who reviewed the philosophy aspect of that in terms of Wittgenstein's life and work. So it means a lot to me. He's a great thinker, a great gamer. Surprisingly, we talked a lot about video games. He's a PC gamer though, so we really get into it. And he's getting into JRPGs for the first time through watching a playthrough on YouTube of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is obviously in the zeitgeist again because news on Rebirth is coming out. So I told him, I guess I'm interested in everyone's thoughts here, but that struck me as a very interesting kind of first point of access to the JRPG genre, because I feel like Final Fantasy VII Remake does so much that kind of subverts or challenges the norms of JRPGs and is in dialogue with kind of one of the greatest JRPGs of all time, Final Fantasy VII. So interesting first entry. Oh, hey, Grail. LOL. Yeah, I'm sure you did unsub for my being a little late. That's so like you. No, I'm kidding. It's good to see you. Good to see everyone. I won't belabor any of that. The one other thing that I wanted to mention was that, as I said at the top, the series was devised not just as a streaming adventure to read these games and think about their relationships with one another and with JRPGs more broadly, with friends and like-minded gamers and people who love the series, but also as analytical articles that I'm publishing on various entries of the series and various relationships between them. So I did one of those on Tales of Symphonia, I did one on Tales of the Abyss, and I kind of have been suffering from a combination of just my life being in a little more upheaval than I expected, between a little bit of travel and personal time and doing some other things and figuring out my day job. And then also maybe just, I don't want to say writer's block because I have a bunch of ideas, but just trouble getting back on the publication horse. I was telling James, I think I'm still in kind of a refractory period after publishing that big thing on Xenoblade. But getting back at it now, I'm working through what I think is an article that you'll really enjoy on not just Tales of Symphonia, but specifically my time streaming it and an interesting kind of experience I had that put into relief for me a lot of the value of this particular kind of JRPG storytelling and what it does to player experience as you go through, especially those older Tales games. So working through that. Look for it on the site soon. I'll definitely let you know when it's live. And then I'm thinking I'll kind of be gradually crawling through to catch up with the current stream, publishing some stuff on Dawn of the New World and into Zestiria. But obviously we're going to have a lot of thoughts on Zestiria as we continue to go through it. We went all the way from being bribed and confronted by the Chancellor and his cabal at Roundtable Castle last time, to meeting the Hidden Bones, the suspiciously, bewilderingly pure, malevolence-free assassins guild that helped Saray and company escape from the castle. We adventured all the way to Marlind, the name of which I have so much trouble with for reasons that escape me. The Plague City. We got there by way of finding the Earth Seraph Edna, who now you can see is with us, with all of her snark and sass and sad feelings about her brother Eisen, whom we met in his dragon form. And now we've been going on a very King Arthur style little adventure in a town that has been beset by malevolence and that we're gradually trying to purify. So we got through most of the pre-purification last time to kind of make the Drake Born of Malevolence hopefully a little bit more manageable. The other thing I'll call out before we dive in here, if you're a fan of Pokemon, or even not, if you're just a fan of JRPGs or video game storytelling, which I hope and assume you are because you're watching this, my friend and colleague Dan Hughes has been publishing this really great weekly audio series, kind of doing similar reflections to what I'm doing on the Tales series and their role in my thinking on games and growing up as a gamer. But he's been doing that with regard to Pokemon, which had a really big role to play in his own development as a gamer. And he... Oh, yeah, of course, Grail. I'm glad that you started it. I really encourage you to dive into it. I was going to encourage people to dive into the series, not just in general, because Dan has a lot of really cool things to say about similar themes to what we're talking about, and sort of the development of not just Pokemon storytelling, but also his relationship with it has evolved over the years. But also, the new episode he published today, which you can find on withatterriblefate.com or also wherever you listen to podcasts, is all about the metagame that was introduced to Pokemon in Ruby and Sapphire, but was really kind of the foundations for the modern metagame of even what people know as Pokemon today. And it got me thinking a lot about everything we've been saying, kind of complaining and ribbing Tales of Zestiria for its really complicated combat and interaction systems. Because he talked about how, as someone who loved the story of Pokemon as a kid, and I'll try not to spoil too much because you should just watch the episode, but the basic thrust was that he loved the Pokemon story, then he got really disillusioned by all of this metagaming in Ruby and Sapphire because it felt like way more work to do to get to the Pokemon story that he knew and loved. But then he went back to it as an adult, and he found himself feeling that that same complicated system of metagaming actually really enhanced the experience of the story for him and was a whole new kind of more robust way into appreciating the same themes and the same special magic of Pokemon that he loved all along. So he really came around to it, which was a really nice story to hear, and also kind of inspired me to really dive in and try to give Tales of Zestiria a fair shake, not just in terms of its story, but also in terms of these combat systems that I have really not been giving a fair shake to so far. It's not to say that I'm going to fall in love with them. I don't expect to, but I do think, like Grail, I think it was you pointed out on Monday, like it is definitely something different and distinct in the broader Tales series that this game is playing around with. And I think there are reasons that it's trying to do that. So I want to explore a little bit, at least, of what those reasons might be as we continue through the stream. No. So we're going to try a happy medium, Grail, because I don't want to do that. I notice now it's a 6-hour stream, because last time you said 5-hour stream of mapping and optimizing skills. So I assume we're just going to keep going up until it's like a 7-hour stream, then a 10-hour stream, and then before we know it, it's like a week-long stream of just doing the meta of this game. I don't want to do that. But I am thinking more like, even if it's not stuff with the equipment necessarily, even stuff like we were talking about last time where, oh, if there's only one human in the party, then you only get 2 characters in combat, like the human and 1 seraph, versus if there are 2 humans, suddenly you get 4. I feel like there are interesting things to think about that. Maybe even something in terms of like what gives the seraph power in the world, right? Because one thing that has already come up in the game is how the Seraphim kind of depend on like the faith and devotion of humans in order to be able to bless the world in the way that the world needs. So I think that even little things like that, right? And that's maybe that alone is not an insight that's worth the convolutedness of the battle system, but I want to keep probing those kinds of questions as we go through and ask ourselves like, yeah, even if we're frustrated by the system, is there, let's give the developers the benefit of the doubt. Clearly they care about storytelling in games like this. Clearly, based on what we were talking about last time, they also spend a lot of time designing each particular combat system for each game with kind of the broader themes and world and all of the story stuff in mind. So let's at least try to give them a fair shake in unpacking what they might have at least been trying to go for with Tales of Zestiria. Which is funny because I know I was saying that's a really important thing to do in general last time, but I listened to Dan's podcast and that made me very aware that I have not been doing that thing that I said was really important to do with Zestiria. So I'm going to try to be more generous to it as we go through. Yeah, I think that's a really fair observation, Grail. And look, I mean, we're playing it on normal difficulty. Have we had a couple close calls with battles? yeah, definitely. But for putting in basically no effort to all of these complicated combat and min-max systems, like we've been able to breeze through pretty painlessly. And I think that's a point in its favor too, that it is fun. It's cool to be able to switch up the Seraphim. One thing that I think I have not called out so far, which bears mentioning, especially if you're watching and you haven't played this game before, is armatization is just so fun. I've always been a huge fan of the fusion motif and trope in Japanese storytelling in general. I remember as a kid, back when I was watching DBZ in syndication on cable, because I'm that old, when they got to the Boo Saga and everyone figured out how to do the fusion dance and combine, like something just clicked in my head where I said to myself, that is the coolest thing and I don't even know why. But since then, like, you know, my favorite part about playing the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game has been all of the fusion monsters. And I remember being really surprised and delighted when I picked up Zisteria for the first time and found, oh wow, like the central tenet of its battle system is doing the fusion dance. Like, that is pretty cool. And we already saw in the way that Saray uses it to form the foundation of the bridge last time. Like, there is interesting stuff to think about in terms of like how the armatization is kind of like Saray entering like God or Jesus mode, being able to perform miracles, and like what do normal humans think of that? How do they see it, literally and figuratively? So I think it'll be cool to explore that kind of stuff as we go forward. Listen, Grail, I wouldn't write anything out. And jokes aside, but not too far to the side, because I'm sure we're going to have lots of jokes during this stream. I am interested in exploring more, like, especially when it comes to a video game where so much is character driven and also interactive driven. Like, I think there are interesting things to say about, like, what does fusion mean? What's its point in a story? And also, like, when you combine two people with very different characteristics, like, you know, the character of Saray and Mikleo or Saray and Edna. Like, we were joking last time about how Saray seems to have like a relatively bland character, but he has all of these very spiky personalities living inside of him in the form of the Seraphim. And so exploring how that kind of creates this agent that is different than the sum of its parts in armatized Saray mode might be interesting. So don't rule anything out just yet. But with that in mind, I think that's enough preamble. We were able to get through the whole museum last time and save Attack, and he was bemoaning the loss and destruction of all his favorite artworks, which caused him to become malevolent. So with that, I'm going to say let's forge on. And I think the last observation that the party made, which I might have been talking over because I was signing off, but remember, Saray can sense malevolence now as the shepherd.
I finished preparing
and
the
he
bombs.
was observing that he could feel the malevolence having decreased in town after all the efforts they made. It's kind of an interesting way to think about the way that purification and healing these places works. Like, what have we really done, right? Like, we quelled the Hellion that turned into Attack, so we found a Seraph who, you know... Wait, I think that the Norman are Seraphim? No, they're the little, like, they're the maids of the Seraphim. Lila told us this last time. I'm remembering. Oh my god, would Attack like AI art? Grail, are we already getting into the deep modern lore of Tales of Systeria? See, you're asking the wrong guy, because I'm just gonna, like, we're never gonna actually play Tales of Systeria because you'll ask all of these half-joke questions and we'll just sit and talk about them for like 45 minutes, which I have no problem with, but other viewers might after a while. But yeah, so we restored, like, the maid equivalent serving the Seraphim, and the Seraphim have this kind of divine relationship to the world. And then also the thing that, like, I called out briefly at the time, but I think is really cool, was the idea that we had that woman whose daughter had died, and she was, like, stealing books which her daughter loved in order to basically profit over because she was so bound up in her own negative emotions, and kind of falling down the path to malevolence. And it was really, like, the motif of the light of justice that saved her, where it was truly just being seen and being called out by Alicia, the Princess Knight, that quelled the malevolence within her and brought her back to humanity. So I think that idea of, like, witnessing wrongdoing and correcting it, first of all, very Arthurian, right, in a King Arthur inspired game, but also really interesting just as we track the broader themes of this to keep track of. I'm glad you think so, Grail. I hope the other viewers feel the same way. There was a whole stream, I don't know if you watched this one or if you were in it, back when we were doing Dawn of the New World. Dan, Speak of the Devil, was here visiting me, and so we were co-oping that. And someone walked in, I think, who like had little to no experience with video games, but I run the philosophy tag on the channel because what we do is philosophy of video game storytelling, and my own background is in philosophy. So this person came in and was just like, hey, you're talking about philosophy? I have philosophical questions, and asked us like a bunch of questions just about like the nature of objectivity in the world and morality and stuff that like didn't really seem to have much to do with the game at all. But you know me, I was able to walk it back to connections with the game eventually. But we basically stopped the game for probably like a good 45 minutes and just talked about philosophy, which was a lot of fun. So I'm definitely enjoying figuring out where the Twitch medium fits in sort of the broader network of With the Terrible Fates content, because, you know, we do like our bread and butter is written analytical stuff. We do talks at conventions, which are still pretty formal, but also like more direct conversation with actual gamers. This I feel like is kind of something nice, exactly because it's like kind of more focused, but also more casual. Like it has a particular game we want to think about, it has a series we want to think about, but it also makes possible, as you said, all sorts of side conversations and just the kinds of things that would happen if you were couch co-oping something like this with someone, and you know, you play through the game, but also a million other things come up on that couch. So it's nice to be able to emulate that spirit as we're thinking about the storytelling of games. Yeah, hell yeah, Grail. That is why the internet is fun. I think it is a niche that With the Terrible Fate sits in, but it's been nice to see over the past 8 years it's grown into, I think, an increasingly popular niche that a lot of people resonate with in terms of just not just thinking really hard about the stories of their favorite games in general, but also like wanting to talk about them in more depth and having language to talk about them with their friends and other people who love these games, which is a big part of what With the Terrible Fate is about, just building the language to be able to talk about these amazing works of art in new and robust ways. So happy to be doing that, happy to be contributing, and happy to have you along on the stream-based journey. It is still much newer than a lot of our other forms of content, but that's part of the fun of it. I'm also going to try, and this is going to be my last time interrupting myself before we move on with the story, but I definitely found myself, especially in the last couple streams, I don't know if it's something about like the way Zestiria does cutscenes and layers in the dialogue with the world navigation, as we've been talking about in the stream so far, but definitely as I've been talking over and having conversations like in the cutscenes, it's been harder even for me to keep track of what's going on, let alone, you know, viewers. I don't know if you find that distracting. So especially since Zestiria has the ability to pause during cutscenes, I'm going to try to be more liberal with doing that so we can enjoy both the game and the conversation without having to walk and chew gum at the same time, which I at least am not super at. That might be the most accurate and concise description of the story of Tales of Zestiria I could possibly imagine, Grail.
Silly.
Literally, Saray definition of good, world definition of bad. But Saray can make world good, or at least redeem world, which is maybe not quite same thing, but thing enough for us to feel good about our mission.
I wonder where Edna went off to.
Who knows what goes on in her head?
I'm back.
What is wrong with you? Huh?
Attack?
I'm here to help. Heard tell you folks could be using an extra jolt of power.
We just might.
If I combine attack's power with my arrows,
we can bring down the Drake.
Edna told me that y'all are trying super duper hard to fix things up. If this glum bum town gets back on its feet, folks might finally remember the place of art in a civilized society.
Thank you, Edna.
I just thought it might work.
Such a high-minded goal for saving a literally plague-ridden town. oh yeah, if we save everyone from their sickness and death, maybe they'll want to go to
Here it
museums
comes.
again.
Drat, it's so dark I can barely see it. That's a good thing. You can fight without worrying about humans catching sight of you.
It is apocalyptic, Grail. I think that's worth pausing for a second. And it's weird because remember, we've been talking a little bit about this because it's talked about the relationship between like people's emotions and malevolence and turning into hellions, but also kind of interesting. And I don't remember like what explanation they ultimately give for this, but they talk about malevolence as this like abstract objective thing that's out there in the world that can make people like more disposed to become malevolent through their emotions. So it's like it's kind of based on your emotional state and it's also kind of based on your environment. So I don't know if that's supposed to be like emanating from the Lord of Calamity or something else like out there in the world, or if it's more of like this vicious cycle of, you know, people become like emotionally negative and that creates a negative environment that then like begets more negativity, which sounds apocalyptic but also sounds like kind of very real and human if you think about like how societies and communities work. So it's like it's little things like that I think that I've been appreciating about Systeria so far, where like as much as it seems like and is a high fantasy world that's very like outside the realm of our reality, I think the way it thinks about stuff like how people become corrupted and what it takes to heal communities is like much more relatable and realistic feeling than I remembered. So it'll be interesting to keep track of if it continues in that vein along the way.
Hey, good thinking. So how exactly should we go about shooting this thing down?
That I don't know.
Tonight's supposed to be a full moon. All we need is some light.
The clouds are receding.
Let's look for a place where we can aim our shot.
Yeah, you got it, Grail. It's a pretty simple workflow, all things considered. Moral of the story, never stub your toe. That's how evil happens. Oh, that's cool. Even with the little Seraph made. God, I can't remember the name for the actual type of creature that he is. Is it just Norman? I think it's just Norman. Even with the little Norman, like, they immediately go from purification to desire for atonement. Talk about a Christian game.
This is it.
Oh, Lesser Seraph? Yeah, I don't remember that one. You might be right.
Attack!
Norman, though, definitely is like the species at least. I'm thinking of. That's what he's going with, at least.
Kitty rhymes! That's some power you got there. I can only handle one shot.
Especially after Dawn of the New World, I'm glad they didn't make the one-shot a mini-game.
Right. And I'll pick when to fire.
As long as we don't have to do the aiming, McLeo.
Now!
That's cool, so,
Nice.
though. So even in like the planning of that shot, we're getting some insight into what I was talking about in terms of like which part of the fused agent is responsible for different things and how their actions work.
Even a mere drake is this big and this strong? You can't be serious.
You should know the difference in size and scale a dragon has by now.
We are here to do whatever must be done.
That's right. As we are now, we can do it. Whatever. Try not to die out there.
Aim and fire! Aim and fire! Here goes! Break on through! Blue flash! Aim and fire! Shade zero! Breakdown!
Alright, when I actually stop and think about like health management and SC management, it's not as hard as I've been complaining about, especially on normal difficulty. If anything, I think more of it is the fact that these battles, especially in comparison with Symphonia and Dawn of the New World, they just feel so much more cinematic and grand in scope that it's much harder for me to step away and look at all of the stats and manage all of that UI. I think because the battles are more sort of small scale just in the way they're represented in those earlier games, it's easier for me to monitor all of the stats. Yeah, Grail, I just saw your message about the resistance. I was thinking that too. Like, I get the arrow part, but especially then to launch into the battle in an Armatus that the Drake elementally resists. Pretty weird. I want to go with it almost for just continuity of like the story. And again, because the battle is so cinematic and it was made possible by Nick Leo fusing with Saray, it feels almost more authentic to be doing it in that Armatus. But it is weird that the dragon resists the very element of that Armatus. It's interesting also to kind of have to always be like melee class and caster class and healer class when you're armatized. It's like you have these great healing spells that I keep forgetting about, so I'm trying to use them in this fight. But then also you're like half of the team's DPS. And so it almost makes you feel as a player, and maybe this is like a nice thematic nugget that makes it more valuable. It almost makes you feel as though you have to be kind of like 2 or 3 people at once, like managing these different battle functions in your one character, in a way that if you're just like, you know, void fighting in Tales of Symphonia or something, your role is much more discreet. So, you know, the glass half empty way of explaining that is, oh, you know, it kind of overwhelms you and makes you feel like it's too much to handle. But I think there's also a glass half full way of reading it, saying like, yeah, it kind of expands the way that you get to think about your role in the battle and what you contribute to it.
We did it!
All right, go team.
The dragon!
It was just a Drake.
Sure, we might not be strong enough to beat a dragon yet, but...
Yeah, we will get there someday.
Oh man, what a look Edna had. So much about her relationship with Aizen without her saying a word. I think that's a really good point, Grail, and that does kind of capture my feeling of it. Just the fact that, like you say, it's closer in, and also it's not like, sort of like a two-dimensional playing field in the way that so many other games are. Like even something like a Dawn of the New World or an Abyss, where free running is a thing, and so there's technically a third dimension. The shot is kind of fixed in such a way that it feels like not just a far away camera, but also like you have this clearly delineated like 2D look into the world. Whereas because, as you say, this kind of follows behind your avatar in battle, it's much more like hectic and feels harder to manage in the way that we're primed to manage JRPG battle. I don't think that means it's impossible to manage, but again, talking about going into the game with certain expectations, if you're expecting something where you can manage all of the systems and battle flows like a Tales JRPG, you're going to be overwhelmed and disoriented in the way that I think a lot of people, including myself, were when they first played this.
Shepherd? So you must be Marlin's.
Guardian Seraph Rohan. Or should I say, I was. I very nearly became a dragon. I have no right to continue protecting this town.
Don't say that.
Seraph Rohan. I am Alicia Difta, Princess of the Kingdom of Hyland. It is we who must bear the blame. We who corrupted the hearts of the people and set you on the path to becoming a Hellion. But I assure you that I shall set things right. If you must punish anyone, let it be me.
And truly a knight's sense of honor here.
So please, if it's still possible, let us have your blessing just this once.
You're an impassioned young princess, I'll give you that. You can see me?
Yes, I have pledged myself as Soray's squire.
Have you? And you're okay?
Huh?
I see.
Ooh, that was a little
The
unsettling.
malevolence in town has lowered significantly. You're the one who dispelled it?
We all did.
Then so be it. I'll extend my blessing.
I want to help too!
Thank you
you.
so much.
It appears the corruption has yet to spread to this tree. Using this as a vessel, I shall expand the blessed domain.
You got it! Norman power!
Huh? What's this?
What happened?
There's still a mega powerful Hellion running around near here.
The domain it's creating is in the way, and we can't stop the invasion of the lesser Hellions.
A major Hellion? Where?
To the southwest, it isn't far.
Soray, we must defeat it.
But
Yeah,
if we leave the town in this state,
it's a good point, Grail. It's almost like if you get corrupted as a seraph, you have to get super corrupted in order to go down the dragon path to at least like continue to exist in some sense. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed. But really, it's like even then you kind of have to be saved. I mean, we've already seen how much sort of like just deep sadness Edna has over her brother Eisen, because it doesn't seem like he has much of a like sense of self or concept of his life, despite just persisting as this immortal dragon, right? It's interesting because while we're paused for a moment, I was thinking too, like you get a lot about the way this moral universe works and who's responsible for what without them really explaining that much of it outright, I think. For instance, with all the stuff we were talking about in terms of attack wanting to do penance, I found myself thinking for a second, like, well, after you quell the Hellions who are going to become the lords of the land and they turn back into Seraphim, wouldn't it be interesting if those Seraphim wanted a way to like do penance and you had like some bonus quest to like help them actually redeem themselves before they can turn into the lords of the land? And so I was going to almost suggest that as something the game was missing, and wouldn't it be cool if it had that? But then I was thinking more, and like even in that sequence that we just had in the conversation with this Seraph, Rohan, Alicia was very clear that she takes it to be like a failing of the people and of the kingdom of Hyland that he was corrupted, because the Seraphim are kind of responsible for extending the blessing, and it's only once they're kind of like alienated from humans being corrupted and turning malevolent themselves, that the Seraphim then consequently become corrupted. So it's like, even if the Seraphim like regret having become Hellions, it's not like they even really need to do penance, because in this moral universe, it's not really their fault. It's the fault of the humans, which is also kind of connected to like the humans having priority in determining like the course of how the world's moral universe is going to evolve in the way that we were talking about, even in the gameplay, like Seraphim not even being able to appear on the field unless they have a one-to-one correspondence with a human on the field. So it's interesting. It's definitely, like, I think a more rigidly articulated and, relatively speaking, easy to understand if you stop and think about it system than I remember in this game.
With your guards all a-sleeping and your hellions all a-creeping.
Meanwhile, Edna.
Saray? Sorry, I just blanked out for a second there.
You need a rest. In.
So
Now.
Ray seemed super okay with
Indeed.
everything that was
Good
happening
ideas
to
will
him.
surely come after we take a breather.
The young shepherd starting to deteriorate. I ought to be more understanding.
Weight
Deteriorate?
of the world, baby. You're telling me there are downsides to saving mankind? That can't be right. Yeah, I'll save mankind. What are they gonna do? Crucify me? What's the worst that could happen?
Lila, darling, you really found yourself a peach of a shepherd. Good on ya.
Why, thank you.
You two go way back, don't you?
There was a time once when the Norman Seraphim and I traveled together.
Lila was like an idol to us. At one point,
Hey, what is it that they say,
49 of us
Grail?
begged her to make
If it
us
were
her
easy, everyone would do it.
You didn't go for it?
No?
Let's all just be friends.
I think there is something interesting in terms of, like, you know, with sort of especially like the Western nature of this game and King Arthur and everything else, like the effort required to be good and the price that you pay. That feels very in keeping with the other elements of the game. But let's go back to the story of how all the Norman in the world were simping for Lila.
What a cruel woman.
Well, 49 is a bit much.
The trauma nearly killed us.
We
all
wanted to
scattered over
form
the
a
globe to be
harem
alone
and she
with our
said
melancholy.
no. So
What?
we turned
Surely that
into a
wasn't
global
necessary.
side
You're
quest.
sadistic harpy.
I don't think I'm a harpy.
It's all good. Us Norman, we roll with life's punches. We all treasure it as a bittersweet memory from when we was carefree youngins.
This nostalgia trip is boring me, but it's true that Norman have useful abilities. If we find any more, let's catch him.
It'd be sad if they turned into hellions.
I'd get a kick out of seeing my old buddies again. I promise we'll help you folks out.
Careful, Grail, your proclivities are showing. 49 Norman and one more who shall not be named. I thought he said he wasn't going to extend his blessing to this area until he dealt with that other Hellion. Oh well, I won't look a gift horse in the mouth. To the inn! Kind of interested in checking out the sanctuary on the way by just to see if people in their sick beds have started to recover now that we've lifted some of the malevolence. That'd be cool. But maybe we have to deal with that other big Hellion first. Well, that guard's sleeping at least as opposed to dying. That seems like a good thing. Well, the conversation isn't that bleak at least, but no, it does not look as if the situation has much improved yet. No, of course not, Grail. Don't be silly. They do put an amazing amount of effort into character design. And even like thinking about the Tales series globally, I feel like just the design of characters in terms of being different kinds of people and also having different kinds of combat styles. Like, there's a lot of diversity in the kinds of characters they represent and the way that they're articulated. Their graphical models are great and only improving with time. Although even some of the, like, you know, less hyper-realistic ones, like the ones in Tales of Symphonia, I mean, playing the remaster, I felt like they had a special charm to them that held up better than I thought they would. So, yeah, I think Bandai Namco does a fantastic job with that.
The Normans' powers sure are interesting.
Not as much as their faces, though.
Yes, the Norman's ability to assist is quite helpful, and each one has different capabilities.
They all look the same, though.
Its abilities change from
Racist.
combining them in different ways, right?
They have bad attitudes, even though they're Norman.
Yes, there should be increasing numbers of Norman.
It's true. I mean, that's such a silly thing to say,
Norman
but
times Norman
it
equals
really does
Norman
prove
Hell.
the point. Like,
sure have
even
a
with a
hell of a
recurring
Norman,
art like
Edna.
Demon Fang,
really.
it's a little
Just a
bit
bone or
different
two
with
to
everyone
pick.
who uses it.
By which I mean 77 confrontations, 108 complaints, and 32 appeals. That's all.
Sounds complicated.
Yo, Edna rules Reddit Grail. Come on.
Could you tell me more
She's the
about
Reddit
equipment
mistress.
skills?
Way to have your head in the game. First, let's go over
Oh
the
no.
basic skills.
I've fallen into a
So
meta
we broke
walkthrough
down into
skit.
10 groups with 5 different elements. So in total, it's
No, I
10
said I was
times
going to give it a
5.
fair chance.
Think
So
you
let's
can do the
study
math,
up.
Genius?
There are 50 Norman named after the basic skill they offer. Each one has the power to draw forth that specific skill.
So if you find a skill that you like, go find that Norman and send them off to the Lord of the Land to do your dirty work.
Oh, that's right.
Elements and skill
This
groups
makes it
aren't
easier
just
to
for
get
tweaking the
equipment
effects of your
drops
skills.
with
They're also
skills you're
closely
trying to
linked bonus
optimize.
skills. That's all the time we have for today. See you again next week.
Next week? We're doing this again?
Joke's on you, Lila. We stream 3 times a week. All right, to the end. It is a nice way, like, again, giving it a fair shake. I think they make it easy to, like, try to optimize things if you decide that you really want to put the effort into it. Like, having a system like the Norman to make it easier to get certain drops you're looking for, and have it related to, you know, finding these support Seraphim. Like, that does feel like something that's thematically consonant and also, like, really nice quality of life in terms of making it easier to actually get the skills that you want to complete your build. You will learn today, but also next week. So, look, being fair to them, at least they recognize that it's going to take you a while to learn this stuff, even though they do dump so much of it on you right away. I mean, of course I want the most expensive meal. Are you kidding me? Thank you so much.
How are you feeling?
Right as rain.
Good. We don't need a sick shepherd.
That'd be bad.
And precisely how long had you been saving that one?
Lila's corrupting him.
Looks like we've got our Saray back.
The shepherd. Perfect timing.
Agil!
We heard about the bridge. You're a superstar.
Well, you know.
You know? Well, whatever. Anyway, we need you to sign for this.
Huh? Me?
More medicine.
It was ordered by a guy named Nafe.
Rose is the employee of the month at UPS.
See? Buck up. We got this.
For your bespoke
you're right.
medieval shipping needs.
Also a message.
I found a group of mercenaries headed toward Marlind and asked them to protect the town, but they refused me. I have asked for additional reinforcements from Lady Lake,
but it will take some time. That's all.
Mercenaries. They might work in a pinch.
Can mercenaries stand against the Hellions?
Probably not the Hellhounds, but they might be able to handle lesser Hellions.
They are vicious, but they are visible. And little.
But they already refused the guard job.
I could try asking again as sincerely as possible.
Wouldn't hurt to go try. Thanks for passing along the message.
Yeah, that's a really good example,
Why are you going
Grail.
through all this trouble anyway?
I mean, especially after we played Dawn of the New World, where cooking goes from like something optional you can do in menus to this like bespoke mandatory part of how you evolve monsters who are a key aspect of your party. Like, yeah, talk about something new every time. Honestly, it's like, yeah, I'm the kind of guy who, it's not just like, why is cooking different in every game? It's like, why does cooking need to be in every game? That's one of those optional systems that I never used growing up as a kid. But I will say, I don't know which informed the other, like if having all of that cooking in games got me into cooking now that I'm an adult, or just now that I'm an adult, I'm into cooking and I'm looking at those games differently. But I do cook in my own life now, and that has me kind of like exploring at least some of these cooking systems more than I did in the past.
Why?
I'm not a good
I
cook,
mean,
but
you
I do
can't
cook.
just not help people in trouble.
I get it. I get that you're weird.
Ah, got him.
Now, where is the medicine going?
The sanctuary.
Gotcha.
Oh, hey. You didn't happen to run into a group of mercenaries on the way here, did you?
You mean the woodsmen? They came with us. I think they're probably still in town. They said they were gonna stock up.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, see, I didn't even remember that, because as you say, cooking is different in every single game, and I haven't played either of those recently. I definitely agree that it's useful, and I think they put a lot of time into each version of the system to make sure that like the meals actually are useful, and some of the effects can be pretty powerful. But for me, like, again, maybe it's just that I haven't given these systems their fair shake in the past, but like it's enough for me in my brain as I'm going through these games and like chugging through all the different towns you visit to remember to, okay, what do I have to do? Stock up on gels, get reusable items, get, you know, the new equipment that's going to beef up my party members that I'm using, and then to also have to like plan out, and I'm going to want to cook these meals and they need these ingredients, so I need to figure out like which ingredients to get, and sometimes more than one ingredient will suit a certain dish, and sometimes it needs one specific thing, so it's like more complexity for like a relatively short gameplay loop of going to a town and stocking up before you head out again. But I feel like it's probably one of those things where once you sort of get over the hump and get into cooking in a single JRPG, it probably makes it easier for you to make it part of your routine in all JRPGs.
Now then, this time we'll be covering skill groups.
We're not going to talk about bonus skills?
We're the ones doing
And
the
Grail,
teaching
that's a
around
great
here.
life lesson
Shut up
too.
and listen.
Yes, ma'am.
Always
It
full,
wouldn't be
never
prudent to
hungry.
explain everything at once.
Everything's
so I'll
better
start
when you're
off
full.
with the ones you can obtain in the beginning phases. So first, there's the status column. This increases basic stats by a certain percentage. Here, it's wise to improve upon your given strengths.
Then there's the HP column. If you're prone to damage, it's best to improve on this. Or just don't get hit in the first place, doofus.
Ah, brilliant.
Anyways, as you can see, aligning the same
Can't
skill
lose
group
HP
together
if you don't
to
get
carry
hit.
out a tactical battle is one option that you have.
And that's where the bonus skill comes into play.
See you again next week!
Next week again?
Just wait, Saray. If you had to manage all the things that we players have to manage for you. That is kind I say that jokingly, but you know, if you know my work outside of these streams and sort of the contributions I've made to the philosophy of game storytelling more broadly, I'm all about like the role that the player takes in a game and sort of how the player relates to the avatar. So it is kind of interesting to think like, okay, Saray is this kind of, like we've been talking about, a very carefree, happy-go-lucky savior figure. How is he able to like achieve all of this stuff in the world while being so kind of like detached in a positive sense from it? And the idea that like we're managing all this complexity in the background and almost acting as the kind of like divine spirit that's animating him and empowering him as the shepherd is kind of cool, I think.
Hurry and get your supplies! We can't be wasting time in a crazy town like this one.
What happened?
Wild dogs were attacking the sanctuary, but these guys put them down. Gotta admit, that was some fine teamwork.
Those dogs are hellions. And no pushovers either. Well, for a human anyway.
Excuse me, may I ask you a favor?
Huh? You're talking to the woodsman, bub. We don't do babysitting. And we won't get your kitty out of a tree.
Yeah, absolutely, Grail. It's a big part of the stuff I think about. Well, actually, more of the games I think about are games where, like, I think there is that kind of relationship, but it's implied and not, like, directly addressed in the game. But, you know, I mean, I think there are games that do that more or less directly, like Nier Automata is a pretty good example. Undertale is maybe a reach for JRPG, depending on whom you ask, but it's an obvious kind of, like, meta game. I think JRPGs in general, like, I think they lean on that mode of storytelling more than a lot of people realize in terms of giving the player a distinct role, but it's not really in their like design or storytelling vocabulary to talk about it that much. Although, I mean, that might be changing. We talked about Final Fantasy VII Remake at the top of this stream, and I think that's another good example. It's not totally direct about it, but it's very strongly implied about sort of the relationship that the player has to the game and how that differs from Cloud and everyone else's relationship to it. So I think as games are continuing to mature as a medium and, you know, think about the resources that they have available to tell interesting and different stories, I think it's only becoming more of a thing. Scarlet Nexus a little bit too, not as overt, but I think it's a really smart JRPG that thinks a lot about that kind of thing. And if you didn't know, was story run by the same person who served that role for Tales of Symphonia and Tales of the Abyss. So big recommend to anyone who hasn't played that. But yeah, one of my favorite things when it's done smartly, and I think it's just going to continue to be the case going forward.
It's about a job only you guys can handle.
I'm the leader, Lucas. What's this job you speak of?
We want you to protect Marlind for a little while.
Yeah, we were asked that before, but turned it down. Ain't taking no chances guarding over a place that's diseased.
See, now we're running into a problem, Grail, because you're talking about things I could talk about for hours, so we're just going to keep pausing and unpausing this cutscene. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I actually wrote, no, I'm joking. It's not no. But maybe you're joking too, knowing you. While we're paused, I'll just grab it and put it in the chat. I wrote this article a while ago, branching off of the work I did on Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I think this is where I talk about stuff like this. I wrote about Final Fantasy IX, which I love, and I think is a great game for the stuff that we're talking about now. But yeah, I think, sorry, my clipboard's not working for some reason. There it is. I think Japanese role-playing games, especially, like, I mean, you know the trope. You begin, solving a village conflict, and then you fight a kingdom, and then you end up fighting God, right? It always kind of ascends from the physical and the individual to these sort of big metaphysical concerns that are larger than the world itself. And so I think for that reason, exactly because of where its scope ends up, where you're talking about these gods or concepts or things that exist sort of beyond the reach of the world of the game itself, it's very easy and rewarding to lump into that broader metaphysical world the idea of the player, this entity who is also outside of the world but influencing it and thinking certain things about it in a way where, you're right, if you have a different mode of storytelling or language for the kinds of things you talk about and how you talk about it, that same way of addressing the player or involving the player in the story probably won't feel as natural, might feel forced, kind of just like breaking the fourth wall for the sake of breaking it. Like I love the Stanley Parable, but great example, right? It doesn't feel like sort of a single sort of cinematically, theatrically satisfying story in the way that, a JRPG that thinks about that stuff does, right? It's much more like self-consciously meta and talking about that player relationship to the world. So 100%, I'm with you.
Hey, boss. The kid you're talking to is the shepherd.
The miracle bridge maker? This scrawny little duckling? You're pulling my chain, right?
At least he didn't call him the ugly duckling.
Marlind back to how it was, but we have to leave town to do it. And the guards here aren't in a condition to fight because of the epidemic.
So you want us to handle it, huh? We do the grunt work so you can get the glory. Is that how it is?
It's nothing of the sort.
Well, they heard he spent all that time lugging that
So
cross
you say.
around and, being a carpenter.
What do you need?
Didn't know he's going to be a
Let
nerd
me
who
tell you
loves
something,
ruins.
Mr. Shepherd. Money talks and horse crap walks.
Mr.
If you're
Shepherd. That's
serious
Mr.
about
Dr.
it,
Professor
put your
Shepherd
cash
to
on
you.
the table, then we'll talk. How about it, Mr. Shepherd?
I also love how, this. I think this is also a Christian thing, right? Like, how everyone in the world who's kind of, fallen from grace and, doesn't see the right path to redemption is also, very self-consciously concerned with, money for money's sake. It feels Christian. My Christianity isn't as tight as it should be for really digging into the way in which this is a Christian game, but I can feel it. Oh, are we poor, Grail? I thought we had the money.
Sure. Go ahead and think all you want, but we ain't gonna do squat for a bunch of pretty words. I'm afraid we're not like your darling disciples.
Oh my god, and you're so proud of that. I thought we had money. Yeah, we have money. You forget, Grail. We haven't been spending any money on optimizing equipment or any of that nonsense. So we're rich.
How about it, Mr. Shepherd?
No, you're good. I can rarely remember how much gold we're carrying at any given time.
Well, well. Looky here. The shepherd comes through. Guess we really can trust you after all.
Now that you
Trust
engaged in
whoever
my
gives you
capitalistic ways, I trust that you are indeed a
And
holy
what
man.
else, pray tell, should be my motivation?
Duty,
Good point,
chivalry.
Grail.
Let's say this epidemic kills one of my subordinates. Will duty and chivalry step in to take care of his grieving family?
Well,
But if I have money, I can make sure they've got a safety net. That's the kind of contract I have with my team. And that's why in return, they're willing to put their lives on the line. You need to start facing reality, sister.
It's an interesting tableau too, because as we see the leader of the mercenaries talking about, it's easy to understand how and why people in this world start focusing on the material and the economic and what it takes to survive, all the really common things that occur in medieval storytelling and were kind of characteristic of a lot of the medieval ages, given my very, very passing understanding of it. But also, I mean, we've already seen through everything in Lady Lake and now in Marlind how focusing on those material concerns, even if it feels justified, is kind of what pushes people further down the path of malevolence and away from the question of, duty and the moral good that Saray and Alicia are all about.
Facing reality, huh?
So, you want us to guard the town, huh? We'll take the job, but on one condition. In return, can we do whatever we want to this town while you're away?
Well, that's a pretty messed up thing to say.
Saray, are you sure about this?
It's fine. No one who values contracts so highly would do anything sleazy.
Well, that seems like a huge leap of faith. Maybe that's who the shepherd is. Someone who trusts people.
All right, you bums, we got a job to do.
Seems like a messed up test, too,
Marlind
man.
and guarding it. Alpha and Bravo squad secure the perimeter. Charlie, handle things in town. I'll go tell the guards what's up. These orders come from the shepherd himself. Don't slack off out there. Ah!
What's this?
Your change. It's our policy to accept a reasonable price for the job we do.
Well, they're cheaper than we imagined.
Honor
We may not
among
look it, but we
mercenaries.
value our customers.
Talking to the wind, what do you mean, Grail? I don't know if I've noticed this yet. It's like when he's talking to midair because no one can see the Seraphim. Is that what you mean? Alright, now we're supposed to leave town. We loaded up on items. Yeah, that is a pretty funny joke. So Lucas, I think, especially in the way he gave, Saray not his money back, but his change. While the Seraphim don't talk about it, he's probably an example like the hidden bones of someone who, wouldn't be the shepherd per se, isn't a beacon of, advocating for justice in the world, but also probably wouldn't have malevolence attached to him because he is sufficiently pure of heart to recognize what's important, even if he identifies as a realist and doesn't prize the moral good in the same way that someone like Alicia does. Alright, we got items. Stuff that improves raw stats. I think we already did this run around. Yeah, I'm gonna say we're good. We can always respec after the battle if we fail. Which is the way out of town. Right, the exact opposite way of where we were going. They are pretty legible maps as far as navigation systems go. It is easy to keep track of where you're going and what you're trying to do. I say that, but I think I might have just exited the town in the wrong direction. Oh no, I did. So, yeah, okay, there are two gates. We entered through the northern gate, exited through the southern gate, and now we're going to go to the southwest over here. Perfect. We have a plan. I actually had that same thought you're talking about when I saw Lucas Grail, the idea that he was a little too designed to just be an NPC. I do wonder, because I know that happens sometimes with Tales games. One of the interesting things I learned while I was writing my Tales of the Abyss analysis was that the story lead on that one had wanted Van to be playable in the early stages of the game, up to the key event that I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but I won't spoil it for people who haven't played Tales of the Abyss. That's one of the development things I really like hearing about, when they had certain plans for characters and then they changed for some reason.
Incredible skill. You wield that spear like an umbrella. It's beautiful, but it is an umbrella.
In a game like this, though, and kind of related to what I was talking about in terms of just kind of Lucas's alignment on the the moral compass of the world, I wonder whether it's less of he was intended to be a playable character and more of he's more designed as a way of highlighting that he has more like morally upstanding content to his character than a lot of the like regular NPCs who just go with the flow and get taken in by Malevolence, because he did seem to have a lot more like conviction than most of the other people we've met in the game so far, besides the party members. Mind. Yeah, I don't know, dude. Sure. Thank you so much. I totally forgot that when you find them, they give you one free skill. I was not prepared for that. Yeah, nice kind of quality of life addition for this kind of metagaming. And tack on a little personality to them, give them this whole simpy relationship with Lila. Makes it more flavorful than a lot of metagaming. This has got to be where we're going, right? Maybe not? Maybe not. This is southwest, but that dungeon is also southwest. So let's try that.
My hair's standing on end.
Oh yeah, here we go.
There's something lurking deep inside here.
Yes, even I can sense something wrong here.
Even you? I mean, come on, Alicia. You're a squire. And you have a keen sense of duty. Makes sense to me. Yeah, it's interesting, Grail, because it's such a medieval game, and I'm almost put in mind of a cathedral where everything in it is just kind of larger than life, and the ceilings are so high, and it's kind of just like, you know, cathedrals were made so big, at least as I understand it, not always to just, you know, accommodate all of the people who want to worship, but also just as like a testament to like it as a house of God and a religious symbol, and also, you know, oftentimes a show of force for the church and kind of a like a center defining like the community or the town or the region. And this whole world kind of feels like that design philosophy to me, where it's sort of like bigger than it needs to be. And the fact that there's not always that much in it, I think, plays a big part in that. Like, you don't think cathedral when you jump into a world like, well, like Tears of the Kingdom, right? Or even Elden Ring, where there's like a ton to do around every corner. Here it just feels like, wow, this is so kind of grand in scope. Yeah. A lot more stuff populating the map would definitely give it a different feel. I don't know if it's a feel I'd necessarily prefer, though. I mean, I think a lot of it depends on, like, the story being told and also kind of what I'm in the mood to do as a player. Because I'll tell you, especially when I'm trying to navigate, like, the story of a game like an Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild, it's like the sheer amount of things to do in the world almost kind of makes me feel a little, like, exhausted, and like it's harder to navigate the world because I just constantly get distracted or sidetracked by the million other things to do. And I get that that can make it fun to, you know, feel like you're living in the world and you never run out of stuff to do. Like, even though I'm done with the story of Tears of the Kingdom, I could easily spend like at least another year just doing things in it. But, you know, I talked to a lot of people who said, like, yeah, you know, I had a lot of fun playing Tears of the Kingdom for the first week, and then I kind of just got, like, exhausted by it, so I had to put it down, and I'm planning to go back to it. And I think that exhaustion is kind of more common than some might realize when it comes to those games that don't just have big worlds, but also worlds that are riddled with, like, just a ton of things to explore and do. Not that it's always a bad thing, or even that's necessarily a bad thing. Just that I think it's a trade-off in terms of what it is the story's trying to accomplish and what you want as a player. Yeah, look, I think Ionios in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is a really great example grail because, like, I found myself wondering playing through Tears of the Kingdom, like, I feel so, like I said, kind of waterlogged, fighting exhaustion to get through that, but I didn't feel it with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which is also just, like, a ridiculously big world, and I spent, like, well over 200 hours on that game, so it's not as if there wasn't anything to do. But I think you're right in terms of like the kinds of activities that you do and like what it takes to navigate the world. It's like it's more in the spirit of Tales of Hysteria, in the sense of like grandness and just like large environments that are kind of cathedral style, impressive and take a while to navigate, rather than Tears of the Kingdom style, like turn every corner and there are a million things to do, and by the way, there are a million corners to turn. It's different.
Splendid job, Saray.
Let's keep it up. Ready, Mikleo? Tiger Blade! Freezing strike! Smite evil!
I love that Saray's line for Shatter Thing is, "I will smite evil." The shepherd is the shepherd is the shepherd, my friends. I'm out of SC, that's why I won't combo. Only Aaron could pay attention.
To be prepared is to be protected. I concur.
What? No, not the cape.
There should be a
Don't
vista
be
point
silly.
nearby. This forest was a ruin too. We haven't found a ruin yet that wasn't crawling with Hellions. The Malevolence really is widespread.
I'm sorry.
It tears me up inside seeing all these ruins defiled. But if we purify the Hellions while we explore the
interesting,
ruins,
though,
isn't that like two birds with one stone?
Oh, good. You can pause the skits too. I wasn't sure if you could do that. It is interesting that Saray's outfit is so kind of like ornate and dignified, because when you think of a shepherd or a savior figure or a Christ figure, so often it's the idea that there's this sort of humility in not just their character, but also like their attire and their presence, and can almost seem kind of like impoverished or just totally rejecting material things in one way or another. And so the idea that he is that decorated, I mean, granted and understood, maybe that's borrowing from more of like the Arthurian side of this game's inspiration than the Christian side, because it was like, you know, bequeathed to him by the royal family that he's, you know, going out and working with, as Alicia has gone from being Princess Knight to being his squire. So that feels more in keeping with like King Arthur and Excalibur and that whole aesthetic. But I think it kind of points out how kind of interesting the tension is, like between Saray as this kind of Christ-like savior, but also Saray as a King Arthur analog. It's not quite the same thing, right? They're kind of drawing from the same well, but from different parts of that well.
Think about how jealous of our adventures literally every other historian and archaeologist will be.
You're such a sweet, simple soul. You know that?
Huh?
You're right. Fretting over this won't get us any closer to our answers. We should all take a page out of Mikleo's book and laugh at our worries.
And if Saray thinks you're happy-go-lucky,
I think Mikleo's in shock.
Let's get going, touchy-feely Mikleo.
Hey, you're doing this on purpose.
Or for short,
touchy-feelio.
No nicknames.
Did he have a cape even before he put the shepherd thing on? I thought you were talking about the shepherd thing. I challenge that. I have to go back to his original outfit to confirm that. Oh my god, where is it? All these menus. Character appearance. Oh, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. Well, no, I understand that. My point is, like... And that kind of even goes to the idea that, like... it's more of a King Arthur thing than a Christ thing, right? Because, like, there was his role as the savior, which he took up before he got the outfit. And then he kind of was subsequently given this outfit by the royal family to kind of...
Elixir?
serve a bit of a role that's different than the shepherd per se.
Oh my, what a delightful butterfly.
Whoops, I guess it's random o'clock again. Anyway, the elixir, you think it's the real thing? According to
First
the
mention of
celestial record,
Nautilus.
the methods used to make elixir were lost ages ago.
And look, an icky beetle going creeper crawler, creeper crawl.
Guess we won't know for sure unless we try it.
You think that's safe?
It'll just be a drop. Whoa, I feel rejuvenated.
It is the real thing.
Nice. Wish we could just buy this at the store.
That'll be difficult. The only remaining elixir left in the world of humans is in custody of the church.
The church, huh?
Ran out of bugs, I take it.
I had this kind of funny thought, because obviously we have this whole recurring bit in the game where Lila can't talk about certain elements of the past because she made this oath to herself that lets her draw in great power. And without spoiling anything about Tales of Berseria, I mean, we've already talked about how it's a prequel to Systeria, so I kind of like the idea that the reason Lila can't talk about things that have to do with the past of the world is that she, like, can't spoil the prequel for the player. Like, the player has to be free of impressions on the past from Systeria before she goes and plays Berseria. Yeah, she hates spoilers, exactly, Grail. Yeah, well, and you know, the elixir, like, Saray just tried a drop, so it probably, you know, maybe restored 0.1% of health. So it's not that it didn't restore health, it's just that we can't see it with the granularity of hit points available to us on the screen. So no problem with the skit being canon there. Jokes, we've got them. Alright. All the way to the other side. Has Saray learned any more skills yet? I wanted to check that. Or arts, rather. Too many terms to keep track of. Nope.
Ready, Miglio? Tiger Blade! Strike!
I must have
Freezing Shot! Fluid Surge! Ready? Dreams! Blade Bang! Let's get him! It's over! Tiger Blade! It's over!
I don't know if this is my imagination or it was an actual design choice that the team made, but I feel like with some enemies, like these leaf guys, they'll get to what looks like the total bottom of their HP, like they've got 1 hit point left, and then it'll take like 3 times as many hits as you expect to actually defeat them. It doesn't seem like a linear decrease in their health bars. Yeah, I hadn't clocked that, Grail. That's a great point. How many, like, new conversations they
don't
have
think
that
we've
go
checked that
along with
monolith
new
out yet.
enemies. Definitely makes the adventuring through the world feel fresh, as opposed to a lot of the earlier games that just have a rotating 3 standard post-battle comments or conversations. Although I will say, and I'm thinking about writing about this too, like I forgot how special even the early games are for having like unexpected, unique conversations that come about from just like putting certain characters in your party for key confrontations or battles. Like the one that really made me realize this and appreciate it in my Tales of Symphonia remastered stream was if you have Presea in your party, as I did when you fight Varley, after you kill him, she just kind of says really quietly, "I can't get my time back," which is like, oh, the most Presea and heartbreaking thing, but like, that wouldn't happen if you didn't have her in your party. And so I think having that like attention to detail is pretty cool and rewarding. Yeah, maybe it just feels more novel to me in this one, Grail, because those kind of like dynamic health bars are less of a thing in the earlier games. You have to, put more effort in to even get a health bar in the first place. If you don't use a magic lens, you just kind of have to feel when the enemy is going down, which is a totally different thing. Oh, I don't know if I even realized that the final boss in Symphonia, you could opt not to have Lloyd in the party. I kind of figured you had to have him. I will have to go back and check that out. Because I feel like I tried to fight him with without someone like Lloyd in my party, and I ran into issues that I wasn't expecting. It might be something they changed for remastered, though, to make you hear the dialogue. Because I remember having to have, like, a party different than what I was expecting. Because the game told me to. The way it'll sometimes say reorganize your party so it includes this person before a battle goes off. I'll have to go back and check the stream. Alright. Might as well do a full sweep. See if there's anything valuable in these side areas. A monolith! I wonder if it's written in ancient tongue. Or something more modern. I can sense it, Grail. I can sense the monolith.
The ruins are calling me. Is that a monolith?
Monolith senses are tingling. Thorny Vest. Beef up attack. I might actually equip that to Saray. Hell yeah, brother. That gives a healthy boost to attack. I have to remember that even if we're not thinking that much about skills, it is still worth it to upgrade equipment in the game just for the stats. Because the game makes it seem at first like it's mostly about the skills, and so you don't have to think about equipment upgrades as much, which is just not true. I gotta get that through my head. Yeah, I was blown away in Abyss, not just from the final fight, which is amazing for that, as you point out, but I think, unless I'm forgetting one, it was kind of the first game to really include like a ton of in-battle dialogue and conversation between bosses. It happens in like at least 3 or 4 key confrontations. And actually, when I was doing my research for the study I published on it, there are a few guides out there that like present the whole script, and one thing that's really helpful is they actually give that dialogue too, because oftentimes like it's such a cool idea, but it's tough in practice because like you won't always be able to hear the dialogue over the sounds of battle, and characters will sometimes say stuff there that's like really interesting about like their perspective on the world or the nature of the world that you don't get from other dialogue in the game. So I think that's such a cool way of, as we've been talking about, not just like further elaborating the relationships between characters, but also kind of adding a sense of continuity and thematic value to the overall experience of playing the game, because then it's much less like battles are these separate kind of mini game that you have to do in order to like get through the story, which is everything outside of the battle, and instead much more like, no, all of this is story, and all the time you're spending with the game and interacting with it is advancing the characters' relationships and giving you more access to the plot and the themes and everything.
When it's go time, we go all the way!
Overdo it and you'll just exhaust yourself, Saray.
All things in moderation, as they say.
Oh, is that right? I have to say, I didn't mention this last time when we were talking about Vesperia, but especially since now I have a dog whom I love very much, whereas I didn't have a dog the first time I played it. One of the reasons that I'm really interested in replaying it is just for the opportunity to main the fuck out of Rapide. How many times do you get to play as a dog as the leader of your party?
Ready?
Yes!
I smell a boss! It was boss that you smelled.
Is this like the plant boss of the area?
No, it looks like a mutant Hellion, like Ouroboros.
Mutant Hellion?
It's probably the effect of the anomalous aura.
Bro, don't even talk to me about Ouroboros.
Let's keep our guard up.
I still have PTSD from this Xenoblade Chronicles 3 study. Oh, I did not mean to armatize. Oh, that's alright. We'll probably not die. Well, we solved it, Grail. Tales of Zestiria is officially part of the extended Xenoblade Chronicles universe. If you can think it, you can make it reality. I keep overdoing my guard sequences because I remember later in the game you get these skills that like beef up your stats if you guard for long enough. So I'm in that habit with my gameplay loops. It's very frustrating to not get those buffs as a result of that. Okay, so there is a gameplay reason to do what I would normally do just as a matter of tactics anyway, which is eliminating the smaller enemies first, it sounds like. See, that is intuitive. I can get on board with that. Oh, did we get an art? There's...
The blessing should
Yeah,
return
there are
to
so many
Marlind.
great speeches in Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Saray!
Alicia!
One villain line that I love just because it's so esoteric and also the line reading of it is perfect is, "Your existence is proof and evidence thereof." With no spoilers. Not going to talk about it, but it's a great line.
You couldn't see it, could you?
And I talk about it in my book, so go to With a Terrible Fate
is
and read
affecting
Forms
you.
of Life if you're interested.
No, I just wasn't paying attention.
Alicia and Mikleo nearly died because of you.
Well, I'm not dead, and Saray was only hiding it for Alicia's sake.
I understand that, but even so, he's at his limit.
I know.
Saray.
Alicia! Thank goodness.
Don't worry about me.
It looks like we were able to expand Rohan's domain. Well, that's that. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, I do want to check in on Lucas's crew.
Here.
Oh man.
Thanks.
Grail, you know how to tempt me into going off, dude. You do have to love him. You have to love every Xenoblade character. Except the Napon in the games before 3. I'll give you the concession of Riku, as we talked about last time. I think this is interesting. I'm thinking more about, like, Saray and Alicia's relationship, too. Because as we talked about a few streams ago, Alicia is a really weird character for me to pinpoint, because I feel like, as we've seen and will continue to see, she goes in and out of the party, and she feels important, but she's never quite fully there. And I'm interested in playing her DLC to see if that's fleshed out more. But I also feel like even in that cutscene we just saw and some of the other interactions that she and Saray have had, I feel like part of what's interesting is, like, it feels like they could be kind of emotionally closer than they are. Not to say, like, romantically interested in each other or anything like that, but just like they could know each other better and be more closely bonded, except their relationship is totally mediated by this shepherd-squire relationship and the sense of duty that they both have. Saray to the mantle of the shepherd, and Alicia the duty to, like, her kingdom and her people. So it's almost like they could be better acquainted, but they have to just be bonded through, like, the mutual interests of duty, because they both see duty as paramount. And so kind of it leaves no space for any other kind of relationship between them. I think that's part of what's weird about it to me. It feels kind of simultaneously like they're close with each other and yet also kind of separate from one another. Is there a way out this way? I don't know if there's a way out this way. Probably not. Yeah, there's one of those rocks in the way that we can't deal with yet.
Where did I go wrong?
I don't know where to begin, Mikleo. It is one of the nice things about cooking in Zestiria for people like me who don't really dive into cooking systems. Like, at least it's quasi-automated, where you can kind of just set some characters to be responsible for cooking, and then they just generate dishes every now and then. If I'm remembering and understanding what's happening right. It feels like it's building up something. Like, I mean, like, the Tales series knows how to do a will they won't they relationship, right? Like the way they play with the relationship between Luke and Tyr, among others. And I personally don't feel like what's going on with Saray and Alicia is that, but it does feel like they're definitely building up, like, more than comes to fruition. And I think the paramount nature of duty is the best explanation I can get. It, like, a generous reason why that would be the case and why it's not kind of like an oversight in the world of the game storytelling. Let's see if that was a better weapon for Lila. Nope. Oh, yes it was. I was just looking at the wrong one. Perfect. I love going the wrong way. I don't think there is a way to do this, but I wish there were a way,
I finished all the preparations.
as is the case for most modern games, to like blow out the map while you're still moving. So I feel like some of these maps, I mean, it's not like they're super hard to navigate, but they're a little bit of a maze, and being able to see the whole maze to decide on the fly which way to go next would, I think, make the quality of life a little easier. Alright, I'm gonna be a big boy and try this dangerous encounter. Get over the PTSD I have from the fairies in the museum.
Nice job, Nickleo.
You've been slacking off,
Yeah,
haven't you?
I deeply get what you mean by that, Grail. I think the way I grew up with JRPGs really made me feel probably the way you do, where like getting a new weapon was something special, and each weapon had a lot of distinctive character, and it would be kind of monumentous when you found a new one. Momentous, or monumental. I combined both. Portmanteaus, we've got them. Here on With a Terrible Fate. Anyway, it would be like a significant impact to you as a player when you found a new one in a dungeon or in a town or at the end of a quest. And so, like, I get that this is just another way of designing like weapon and equipment systems, but I completely agree with you that the way they do it, where you get like a weapon that seems the same and the only difference is the skills, it's kind of a letdown to me too. To be honest, like, that's a big part of why, and I know this is not an original thought, but like the Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom weapon system, where everything is breakable, like the durability limits frustrate me, but kind of even more than that is the issue that we're talking about, where so often you'll end up just kind of grabbing weapons from the environment that are the same weapons you've seen a million times, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna grab one of these, you know, sticks or this knight sword that's been lying around, and I'm gonna fuse this familiar material to it to make this familiar weapon. The way you kind of just replicate the same weapons and equipment over and over again. It's not like every weapon is like that, but the fact that the majority of them are, I think, kind of strays from the design language I'm familiar with in a way that's kind of hard to get on board with.
Hey there, Shepherd's Pie. As you can see, everything
Got
goes
him.
hunky-dory.
Thanks. I knew you could handle it.
How'd it go?
We managed.
Good to hear it. Then I guess it's time for us to pack up and ship on out. The guards are trickling back onto duty, and we've got a new job lined up all.
Yeah, that's fair about the difference in the combat systems, Grail. I do feel like kind of when you have the high frequency of battles that you do in something like a Tales game, the like your relationship to the equipment is very different than in a game when fighting is a relative rarity. I hadn't thought about that.
Ready.
Shall we take a break at the inn for a spell?
Sure.
Yeah, he does have a party member look about him, Lucas, doesn't he? This is such a... Oh, I wanted to check at the sanctuary to see if people were better. That's why I was on autopilot over here. Yes! Now it's back to just a regular church setup. Oh, nice to see the sickbeds empty. Oh, but there are still many funerals left to be held. I guess change happens slowly. Just trying to talk to the other guy. Alright, to the end. Yeah, that's a point. Almost like with them being so hyper available, you would assume their quality to be a little lower. And everyone's thinking about the funerals. I guess you would with a mass death like this. Interesting dissonance, though, to have this like upbeat, uplifting music now that the town is restored, but talk to everyone and they're saying like, yeah, you know, things are better, but we still went through a lot of pain and we still have a lot of pain to go through and actually healing. It's an interesting way of representing kind of what the reality of this sort of situation would be. This is such a minor complaint, but I do wish that if they were going to go to the trouble of voicing the background dialogue to make towns seem more vibrant, like they did, I wish that they had recorded like different tracks for the different towns, because this is very clearly the same background voicing that we had in Lady Lake, and I'm sure it's going to be what we get in other towns too, and that makes it feel like, you know, presumably what they were trying to do with the background voices was make it feel more lifelike and realistic. So then to hear the exact same things is almost like undercutting what presumably the exact point of that edition was, because it makes it feel so much less realistic and more forced to me. Yeah, that's a good point, Grail. Like, the disappearance of the sickness is not framed for us as the audience as miraculous in the same way that the raising of the Bridge Foundation is. But you're totally right. I mean, like, cure a town of a devastating plague in a day, like, that is just as much a miracle. That would kind of be inexplicable. It's good to keep track of that stuff, because you can see, like, on the one hand, to us as players, it probably doesn't feel that atypical, because, you know, it's a JRPG, we have the party goes through the world and does great things. But thinking about it from the perspective of the humans in this world, you can definitely see it, like, building up the story of, like, a Jesus, right? Going through the world and, like, quietly performing a bunch of miracles. There is something that's a little, like, yeah, almost... I don't want to say schizophrenic, but like, yeah, less than sane about it.
Take it easy for
it sounds sometimes more manic than like, you know, just casual conversation.
Marlind?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Why?
What?
Why?
Huh? A seraph?
So you are with this one.
Why aren't you staying in Marlind?
What is your problem?
Silence, brat! I'm asking the shepherd.
Why are you throwing away the name you've earned for yourself from saving this town? Why throw yourself away like this?
We've done all we can here. And I have more to learn elsewhere. That's all.
How odd.
You too?
Who were they?
I don't know. But this means there are other humans who dwell with Seraphim besides me.
Though they're assassins.
Well, I say to hell with them. The more important issue is where we're headed next. Thought about it?
I have. The Rolance Empire.
Splendid idea. Hellions and ruins alike know no borders, after all.
True.
I really like that thing that Saray said. I've learned all I can here, and I have to move on, or whatever that line to the unnamed assassin was. Especially coming off of Symphonia, that's such a nice counterpoint to Colette's quest as the Chosen of Regeneration. So they're doing, at least, before you know the truth of the journey of regeneration, it seems like Colette and Saray are on very similar paths to heal and save the world, except like we talked a little bit about last time, Colette is very much following a strictly determined path of these are these seals that you have to go and release, whereas Saray is much more, you have to explore and learn as much as you can about the world in whatever wandering adventure makes sense to you. And so having his assertion of his whole ethos behind why and how he's doing this, I think is a nice way of kind of identifying him as a distinct sort of savior who is going about things in a different way than a lot of other savior types that we see throughout the series. Yeah, Mikleo reminds me sort of as of a kid who has outgrown his clothes and has kind of a bad haircut, but his parents are kind of maybe sort of absentee, so they don't really notice and don't update his wardrobe or help him keep up with the fashion, which is maybe what leads him to have a bit of a chip on his shoulder as a character. Seems consistent with Mikleo.
So, that was Lucas and the Woodsman, huh? They sure are a funny bunch.
It seems people form bonds in more ways than I realized.
Their logic makes sense, though, if you buy their premises in the first place.
Those who give themselves completely to what they believe in are all the more pure for doing so.
It's true that I felt no malevolence from them.
You mean malevolence doesn't spring merely from the distinction between right and wrong?
Even a villain might not bear any malevolence, specifically because they believe so thoroughly in their villainy.
Man, this malevolence stuff is tricky business.
Well, be assured at least that it's a very good thing you're so concerned about it.
I think it's good too, Saray.
Though it's a fine line between pure and naive.
Can't argue with you there.
This is making my brain hurt.
So that's a really important skit for all the stuff we've been talking about, obviously, I think. And as I hear it, I think I can remember it coming up in the main game outside of skits after this, so I won't dwell on it too long. But notice, we've been talking in very clear terms, because this is how it's been presented in the game so far, about the distinction between malevolence and purification as kind of the two poles of moral valence in this world, where there's a real objective good and a real bad, and humans are able to kind of fall from grace but also be redeemed by the shepherd. But now what they're very clearly saying is no, malevolence isn't the result of that. It's a kind of impurity of motive almost, where you don't really thoroughly believe in what it is that you're doing. So a misalignment between your intentions and your actions and who you are, which is really interesting to think about in terms of what we were talking about, how emotions are related to malevolence and kind of draw people away from their sense of self. But also remember, Saray's whole thing is he wanted to become the shepherd in order to pursue his dream, and he's been really adamant about people only joining in his mission, and Seraphim only joining in his mission if it aligns with their dreams. So he, from the get-go as the shepherd, has been concerned with making sure that everyone who joins his flock, so to speak, is acting really purely in accordance with their intentions and what they really believe in. So kind of unknowingly aligning with that sense of purification that's distinct from malevolence as a friction between your intentions and your actions. So it'll be interesting as we go on to think about how that model of malevolence relates to what I think remains a pretty objective and well-defined moral universe in this world. Just not quite the world that the game's been representing up to this point in the story. Oh, is Mikleo wearing a corset, Grail? I didn't even, I don't know that I'd clocked that. That's like a waistcoat, I think. A waistcoat with like tails that come from the shoulder as opposed to your waist for some reason. Yeah, it's different. But look, I'll say back to you what you said to me about the battle system. Like, at least they're trying something different with his design, right? We're not getting reruns of the Tails outfits and character models from the last however many games they've done at this point. What, 10 or something probably, at least, without stopping to count?
We sure have had some fantastic weather lately. On that note, it's time to continue our skill lecture.
If you say so.
Today's lesson is about bonus skills. Aren't you ecstatic?
So ecstatic.
Sure.
You can probably enact a couple skills without even thinking too much about it. But from the combination of basic skills you use comes...
Wait for it.
Bonus skills! But hullabaloo aside, the way it works is actually super simple. There are only 3 special rules.
There's Stack, a bonus that activates when you equip the same skill multiple times. Lumping them together like that will give you a little extra boost.
The effectiveness will vary based on how many of the same skill you stacked, but at the end of the day, it produces only 1 stack bonus.
So when you equip 4 of the same skills, the stack for the second or the third ones don't occur.
Next, when you equip all 5 skills belonging to the same group, you have a group union.
For this one, you'll need to have collected all 5 skills of a specific column. The bonus skill will further enhance those skills' effects.
And lastly, there are elemental unions, which trigger when you place skills of the same element next to each other. But...
Oops, out of time. See you again next week.
Seriously?
Without getting too far down this rabbit hole, because I don't know how deep or shallow it is, I think there is also something actually kind of interesting to think about in terms of how the different games in the series represent the characters in the party learning about those battle systems. Like, we have a game like this with all the complexity in its combat systems, and we have some knowledgeable characters literally delivering lectures on the game mechanics to other characters, and of course the player gets the benefit of those lectures too, which is kind of the function of it in terms of you being able to learn the gameplay. And I was thinking as I was watching that skit, man, you know, there's not really anything like that in the earlier games. But I was thinking one thing that you do get in the earlier games, which is different in terms of the role that it serves for the player, but it's kind of the same thing in terms of like characters teaching each other combat things, is characters teaming up to learn certain arts. So like I can think of more than one sequence in like Tales of Symphonia, Tales of the Abyss, probably others that I haven't played as recently, where characters will like spend the night at an inn, and like Lloyd will go out with Kratos and they'll train, or like Luke will drag Guy out of bed and they'll train, and their resolve to kind of learn more about combat will lead one of them to like learn a new art, which is not the same thing as walking someone through a big, long, complicated system, but it's like a very different yet kind of resonant model of how these characters are actually like bonding with each other and having conversations about what it takes to get through these battles. Again, kind of bonding the gameplay of the game with its story and character-driven content a little more tightly than you might otherwise expect, which is a cool way to, grow the combat system over time, whether that's giving you access to new arts or just helping you to learn the systems a little better as a player. Yeah, Grail, that's interesting. I guess it depends on what you mean by uniqueness, right? Because I was thinking more of, like, especially when you have a long-running JRPG series, it's pretty easy to roll back sort of human characters with very similar designs or outfits or weapon types, even to the point that, you know, if you look at certain later Final Fantasy entries that shall not be named, they literally like make a selling point of it. Oh, buy this DLC and this character will be able to use the old beloved weapon of a character in an earlier game because they basically have the same moveset, right? Whereas I think in terms of character diversity in the Tales series, I think amongst the models of, you know, types of humans you have and sort of their stature and appearance and perspective on the world and personality, I think you do get a decent amount of diversity. But that's a good point. If you were looking for non-human characters, this would not be the series for you. I'm interested though, when you say that, like, do you have in mind other JRPG series off the top of your head that you think have more like non-human character diversity? I'm sure they do exist. Like, my guess is those are just not series that I've played, but I'm interested because that's not even something that I would think of off the top of my head. Okay, where are we going next? Talking to Rohan. Great.
Saray, let us give our respects to Rohan and the others.
Right. Good thinking.
Alicia's not stoked about Saray's resolve to go to the Rolance Empire. Understandably. Yeah, that's true. Because Chrono Trigger, you have, the guy who's transformed into a frog. It's been so long since I played that game, I can't remember the character names. And the robot, right, which is non-human. And I guess you could say the cave person from the prehistoric era is kind of proto-human as opposed to human. That makes sense. Yeah, Persona. I don't have as much experience with Persona, but I can think of the example of the cat but not a cat character from 5, right? The name of which I'm blanking on. Yeah. I feel like oftentimes in the Tales games, you get that kind of diversity, but just not in party members. Like, you know, you have Noish, the dog that's not a dog in Symphonia, and Mew is really, I think, for all intents and purposes, a part of the party in Tales of the Abyss. You know, just doesn't fight, but is as involved in many other parts of the story as a lot of the characters are. And you get kind of character-adjacent characters like the doll Tokunaga, I think is the name of it, that Annis uses in Tales of the Abyss. And isn't there a similar doll character combo in Tales of Xillia? Which again, I haven't played all the way through, but I have a memory of a character like that. So I think it's on their mind in terms of design language, all that to say. I think it's just not as prioritized in terms of playable characters as it is in other games.
Fix this place right up.
Although I will point out, Dawn of the New World, right? Like 90% of your available party members, monsters, right? So the exception that proves the rule, I guess.
That's good. We can take our leave in peace.
No, y'all are running out on us?
You Take care, Attack.
I'm staying behind.
Huh?
After all, we need to find someone to properly give tribute to Rohan.
Alicia, you don't mean...
And I have to report to Lady Lake about what happened in Marlind.
I don't want to interrupt this emotional moment with Alicia too much, but I do see what you're saying, Grail, about non-human characters, and I think... I don't know. I was going to say I'm kind of optimistic for that happening in the future. I don't know whether that's true. I mean, they did stuff like Repeat in the past, which I think was kind of ambitious for a mainline JRPG to, like we joked, like half joked about earlier, have a dog as a playable character. Like, that's interesting. And I do think in the broader scope of things, like, I mean, one thing that I look forward to in storytelling more broadly, and I feel like we've gotten some stories about this in gaming lately, is just like focusing more on non-human animals as we kind of just as a global community think more about like the environment and the plight of the other animals and things like that. I remember, I'm not going to think of the name of this game, but there's this one that came out, at least on the Switch pretty recently, that was like this really cute cooperative, like hand-drawn adventure between, I think, a wolf and some other animal. Shout it out if you know what I'm talking about, because I clearly don't. But I clock games like that every now and then, or even like an Okami. Like, I loved Okami because, yes, technically you, the player, are playing as the goddess Amaterasu, but your avatar, of course, is the beautiful white wolf who is the avatar of Amaterasu. And I think there is something kind of special about using the interactive nature of video game stories to kind of put you as a human player in the shoes of something that you can imagine as an agent with thoughts and feelings and intentions and emotions, but is not a human. It's an interesting way to kind of generate empathy for other species, I think.
Things with the council have just settled down, and if you're with me, you'll just get wrapped up in it again. I would love to continue our travels, but
This is interesting. This ties in with what we were saying before. I forgot the reason she stays behind is out of her sense of duty. So very directly getting in the way of a further relationship with Saray.
For everything.
Exactly
Saray.
like I was saying. Well, sense of duty and also Edna.
It's not like you won't see each other again.
I shall do my best to work toward a Hyland with no malevolence.
And I'll keep chasing my dream.
Safe travels.
Y'all come back now, you hear?
Yeah, that's the real hidden duty, Grail. It's the deep lore. Did not mean to fast travel, I just wanted to look at boons. There we go. Yeah, and now we're back down to 2 party members. But hey, we really thought a lot about Alicia and her role in the whole Shepherd's party. And so now, instead of Aaron immediately going to complain about being reduced to 2 characters in battle, we can think about what it means and how it feels different after Alicia
There's
has
something
left.
nearby.
A shiny, pretty stone. Does make me curious. It might be some sort of artifact.
So now we are starting to get side quests. It's an open question of whether we want to go on them versus exploring the main story. I kind of don't remember how much like narrative content or interesting insights into the story we get in the side quests in Zisteria, if I'm being real. No, I know, Grail. Don't worry. I understand. I appreciate you clarifying, but I'm just riffing with you. You're good.
I have a message. It's urgent.
Hey, hang in there!
The Empire. The Rolance Empire is attacking.
What?
So the war has begun.
Please, pass the warning to the people of Marlind. I have to get to the capital.
You're injured. It's too dangerous.
There's no time to waste.
Be careful. Don't do anything reckless.
Thank you.
We'd better go tell everyone.
All right, you bums! Playtime's over! Let's go show those frou-frous in the capital what we're made of! Ah!
Now, when you know the size of the world, am I right, Grail?
I'm going.
Yeah, I couldn't live with myself if we let these folks just run out to get slaughtered.
You mustn't! If the shepherd enters the heart of battle, the camp he extends his help to will surely be victorious.
So what, we just sit quietly and watch?
Yep, it's up to the Earth Dwellers to figure out some sort of compromise with each other.
But with the shepherd's power, I know I could save people.
You might save the people of Hyland, yes. However...
The people of Rolance wouldn't be so lucky, is the flip side.
Correct. That's the nature of war. War knows neither justice nor malice.
The power of the shepherd greatly shapes the world itself. Were you to enter the war, there's no telling how warped it could become.
All right. I do want Lucas and his group to take refuge along with the villagers. Will that be okay?
Yes.
Oh no,
Let's talk to
Grail.
Lucas at once. They sounded like they were getting ready to leave any
It's a real
second now.
Sophie's choice.
Okay.
Well, don't worry. You can always catch the VOD if you have to go. Just might not be as interactive or fun if you have to watch it without the benefit of my riffing over the war scene because you and I were chatting.
Seraphim, don't forget about the library key.
See, that's the problem with
Right.
Twitch, Grail.
I need
You
to return
create
it to
the
Nev.
content as much as I do.
Nave!
Oh, Soray.
I came to return this. It's from Agatha.
The key to the library. Thanks, and sorry to trouble you.
When I grow up, I'm gonna be like Maltran. I'm gonna be the second Blue Valkyrie. Boys can't be Valkyries, dummy. If Maltran's teaching anyone, it's gonna be me. She's not gonna teach you. Your clothes aren't even blue. They will be once I finally get my mom to buy some.
Wait, but are the boys' clothes
Someone's
blue?
popular.
It's because Lady Maltran actually comes from Marlind. She only became heir to her line when all the other successors passed away. And while her sense of responsibility was second to none, she was quite a frail young girl. She has trained herself very rigorously. And now she is the Blue Valkyrie.
So they're opposites.
What?
Nothing. You just clarified something for me.
Oh, I don't really get it, but I'm glad I could be of help to the shepherd.
I had one more thing I wanted to ask. Have you heard of Irish gems?
Iris gems? We have one.
Oh.
I just enshrined it in the sanctuary as an offering for the town's restoration.
Can we borrow it? There's something we're investigating.
I wouldn't dream of refusing the shepherd's request. Please, keep it as long as you like.
Thank you.
Well, see, that side quest is something that definitely is insightful for the story. Learning more about Alicia's mentor in the spear, and also getting access to an iris gem, which I do remember as some of the most interesting and story relevant quasi side content. Yeah, we can definitely talk about it more next time, Grail, because I'm sure I won't get far beyond that, if at all, in the next 45 minutes. 'Cause it's a pretty intensive sequence as I remember it. But I think, yeah, it'll be a lot of good stuff to talk about. I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but we're also going to be playing it right now, so don't get too spoiled, folks who are watching. But, you know, we've been talking about Soray as this kind of dual character of King Arthur and Christ, and I think what you're talking about, Grail, is kind of the perfect way of articulating what the synthesis of those would be, right? Basically, like a holy warrior, right? Like a paladin of the Crusades or something, which also has its place in like history and that kind of lore. So I think it is kind of like, as you say, powerful and interesting, almost kind of inspires like terror and awe too, like to see someone who can literally perform miracles invest in war like they're talking about. I mean, there is something that's kind of scary and humbling about that to those who are kind of at the mercy of those leaders. I think this is a war-related Iris gem too. It's been a while, so viewers will recall Iris gems give us insight into past events in history. With little extra context, but we do kind of piece together the context as we go along.
Mikleo, what do you think it means?
The king was handing a sword over. Pretty clear that it was some formal military ceremony. And I imagine the person receiving the sword was a general.
The uniform would suggest a general of the Rolance Empire. It's hard to say exactly when this took place, though.
Whoever he was, he sure looked like a hero.
But what does it mean? It's not like that's a particularly uncommon type of scene, historically speaking.
If we could see more, we might get a better idea as to why this scene showed up.
Do you think there are any more?
I don't know, but let's try to find them. I mean, hidden glimpses of history? How cool is that?
I do find that I'm kind of increasingly becoming a fan of that mode of video game storytelling as I see it more and play it more and maybe just get older. The like memory object trope. I'd be interested in like tracing the history of the development of that across the medium because I don't know it very well. Obviously, it comes up in Breath of the Wild, which was after Zestiria. The first time I can remember seeing it was Final Fantasy X has I think they're called Ject Spheres, which if I remember right have sort of similar memories of the past in terms of relevant events and characters from that world. I would imagine it probably showed up in games earlier than that. But that's kind of the first example I can think of off the top of my head at least. But being able to like, as you're adventuring, discover like these little windows into things that happened before you, the player, entered the world and had agency within it, I think is really cool. Yeah, cheers, Grail. Thanks for showing up. Yeah, I appreciate you hanging out. Look, like you said before, the side conversations and chatting about everything that these games bring up is a big part of the magic of Twitch and definitely part of the magic of what we're trying to do on With a Terrible Fate. So appreciate you. Love talking about this stuff with you. Hope to see you again. We'll be back same time on Friday. Cheers, buddy.
Lucas, I'd really like you to seek refuge along with the villagers.
Like hell! The battlefield is where we earn our living. Besides, we just helped rebuild your town here, no? You really want to see Rolance tear it to pieces?
I'm just worried about all of you. Please.
Fine. We'll pull back beyond the Grifflet River. It's a damn shame. We're just gonna abandon this town right when it was getting its punch back?
We both know what's really important.
I can tell I'm no match for this herder of sheep. Change your plans, you bums! We're taking the townsfolk to safety, up north across the Grifflet River. Get your preparations in order.
Thank you.
You'd better get ready yourself. The bridge still isn't fully restored just yet. We'll probably have to go ahead and set up camp by the riverbanks.
You got it. What's that?
I don't know. What is that? Is there a point of interest in this? We got the monolith already, right? Yeah, we saw that already. Is it the horses? You don't? No. Oh, here it is. Flowers of the Great Tree. Love a town with a great tree. Another motif in these games. Well, before we head into the battle sequence that is to follow, since we've gotten all of 2 side quests in the game so far, I feel like it would be nice to be generous and do the other one, since it's just a simple exploration of the ruins that we already just saw, and see if it yields any interesting story content.
Saray, when you said they're opposites...
Boy, are you thick. Thick, Leo.
Hey, I was gonna say you meant her and Alicia, if you'd let me finish.
Forget it. The moment is over. Mickly over.
How did my life get to this point?
I think it's mostly
It's
your
not
name,
a bad
buddy.
thing for them to contrast with each other, just...
They've been striving for the same goal, even though their motivations and circumstances are different.
Right. Alicia chose to carry out her duty as royalty, even though it hasn't been going as well as she'd hoped. While Maltran never wanted to be a knight, but nevertheless, she's achieved great deeds and earned the respect of the people.
In each case, things haven't gone entirely as planned.
Perhaps both of them feel that way.
Interesting to have a game where the characters themselves are pointing out opposites and antagonistic relationships between characters within the game, when we've been spending so much of this stream talking about those kinds of relationships between characters in this game and characters in the other Tales games, like Saray and Colette, for example, most recently, I think.
Shouldn't we tell Saray and the others about how useful the Lords of the Land are?
Or even
If
Saray
you
and
keep
Ratatas,
babying
because we
them
talked
instead of
about
letting
it
them
a few
think for
streams ago.
themselves, they're just gonna turn into, well, babies. But then again, they do need to know things like how the affected area is predetermined, and how boons increase as you engage in more battles.
And also how, if there's a skill you want, you could ask a Norman to increase the enemy drop rate.
And not to mention how, as you acquire more boons, the amount of boons you can make effective increases as well. If they knew that much, it'd be plenty.
I just want to make sure that, if they wind up in an area with no boons, they know to focus first on restoring the Lord of the Land's blessing to the area.
Even if you don't have confidence in your battle abilities, common sense is common sense, no matter how you cut it.
Huh. Interesting.
Did you eavesdrop on our conversation?
What, is that a crime?
I mean, it kind of seemed like you wanted them to. And I think that's a nice feedback loop too, once you get into the meta and decide, okay, I really want to get the right skills and beef up the party and optimize them, to have a system where you get more boons that make battles more rewarding and easier as you engage in more battles, and you have the Norman layer to help increase the frequency of equipment that drops with the skills you want. Like, it all does kind of feed into itself in a way that I think probably once you get into it, it becomes pretty intuitive, even if it's not intuitive right off the bat. Now we get to explore the field with suspense music. But it's worth it for the side quest. Maybe it is. We'll find out. How far are we going? Yeah, not even too far. We'll mostly be remembering where those big old blocks are. Literally blocking our way. I think we can get through here. Yeah, perfect.
Ready, Mikleo? Tiger Blade!
Oh, I forgot. We're down to 2 party members now. Although it does seem like they've scaled down the number of enemies that we have to face appropriately. That's nice. Oh, well, I thought there were only 2. I guess there were 3. Still, more manageable than I think this type of battle had 6 enemies in it beforehand. So that seems a little more balanced than I remember.
Ready? I want to become stronger as a seraph.
You have more than enough talent for it. Don't push yourself too hard.
Oh, this was an Iris gem too. Oh, definitely glad we made the effort. Well, so far then, we have pretty good data that the side quests are valuable and worthwhile in terms of story content. It's a good indicator.
Was the author of the Celestial Record a village chief? It looked like he was founding a village or something. Hey, Mikleo, I was wondering, you don't suppose he was a shepherd? If the shepherd was the one who wrote the Celestial Record, a lot of things start to make sense, and... Mikleo?
Oh, sorry. What did you just say?
Whoa, I've never seen you space out like that. You feeling okay?
Oh no, poor Sickleo. Nice.
Not nice.
No, but seriously, you alright? Should we sit down for a bit?
I'm fine. I just got caught up in my thoughts. For some reason.
Well, it's interesting. We got such a tangent on Mikleo being thoughtful and reflective there with kind of no indication as to why. It's interesting too, just in terms of the design of these items. How we as players almost have more information than the party does. I mean, presumably Lila has more information since she remembers some, if not all, of the content of the Iris gems. But at least like Saray and Mikleo. But, you know, they get to see the visions that we also see in the Iris gems. But we also have the item descriptions that, based on their conversations, it doesn't seem like they're privy to. Like the one that showed the preparations for war. We know it's the Rolance army. They're getting ready to march to war, and the soldiers are cheering. That one's maybe a little more just descriptive of the events that we see. But this one, like, the author of the Celestial Record founding a village with his wife, child, and friends, like that idea that he has a whole family, like, maybe it's kind of implied by what we see in the Iris gem, but it certainly wouldn't be that clear to me without the written description of it here. And it at least kind of seemed like, based on the speculation that the characters were talking about in the skit following the viewing of the Iris gem, like, it might not have been clear to them either.
Great, I'm ready.
Blade bang! No escape! Right! Yeah! Hang on, everyone! It's over! What? Yeah! Tiger Blade! Strike! How's this? Let's get him! No escape! You were quite strong, but we're no pushovers either.
One thing I'm noticing right away that's kind of interesting about being reduced down to just Saray and one Seraph at a time versus Saray and Alicia and 2 Seraphs at a time is it does make me feel like the focus is very much more on Saray and his individual relationships with the Seraphim. So often in JRPGs, when you have 4 or more characters engaging in battle at once, it becomes much more about the group dynamics and the plurality of relationships as opposed to focusing on any particular relationships, which is part of why, as we talked about in Dawn of the New World, it was a little unusual feeling for Marta and Emil to be the only human characters in the party, the rest being covered up by monsters. Here I think we get a similar sense of intimacy almost to what we got in Dawn of the New World, where now that it's just Saray and one Seraph at a time, whether that's Mikleo or then switching off to Lila, it feels much more like Saray has to kind of temper and refine and invest in his one-on-one relationships with them because they really have to succeed as partners in order for a battle to succeed because they're the only two there, rather than just kind of relying on a network of support from the various Seraphim he's drafted into service to serve at the pleasure of the shepherd or something more detached like that.
Indeed, that's the end of it.
Alright, I think those are all the side quests we have so far. So on with the main story. I think they're pretty good about pointing the purple stars out even on the mini-map, which is nice, so they're pretty hard to miss. Which is why, as I was saying at the start of streaming Zisteria, they're hard to miss to the point that there don't even really seem to exist like side quest guides for this game in the way that there existed a guide I used throughout the stream of Dawn of the New World, just because the game is so kind of blatant about making sure you're aware of whatever side quests are available. Yeah, I'll do a once over of the map just to make sure. Alright. Let's break through that suspenseful music and get on to the tribulations of war.
We're good on our end. What say you, Shepherd? Ready to head for the river?
I am Commander General Landon of the Hyland Army. Is the Shepherd with you?
That's me.
You, huh?
Does your business with the Shepherd really require so many troops, General Landon?
You're that sellsword Lucas of the Shrub Boys, aren't you? Just as well. You listen up, too. I bring word of Lady Alicia.
On suspicion of using the Shepherd to foment discord against the state. As well as assisting the Rolance Empire with its invasion, Lady Alicia has been detained.
That's nonsense! Alicia would never do such a thing!
We could have seen that coming, though.
It is not an arrest, Shepherd. Merely an interrogation.
Well, this certainly stings to high heaven.
But if the Shepherd were, say, to wield his power to deliver victory to our troops, it would likely assuage any suspicions we might have.
Why, you...
Well, they already tried bribing him, so the next logical thing is threatening him.
Saray, let us do as he says. We probably don't have a choice. If Alicia were to die at their hands.
Yes, we all know Saray would blame himself for it.
And if that were to happen, even someone like Saray could become corrupted by malevolence. That's it, right?
If the Shepherd is corrupted by malevolence, it will guide the world to ruin, faster than even war could accomplish.
The sooner we end this, the better. We can make this work. After all, you've got us with you.
So the Shepherd's purity is paramount.
Do I have your guarantee Alicia will be released?
Even more important than his abstention from war.
Yes.
So I suppose he can't bring
We're
about
coming too.
anything good without that purity.
Sorry, but it just ain't in our blood to turn tail and run. We sellswords have built up too much pride in too many battles for that.
Very well. But I'm in charge here. You had better not forget that. So then, Shepherd, I'll be waiting on the battlefield.
Hey, cheer up, buddy. With a woodsman on the job, the shepherd won't even have to lift a finger.
Saray, please hold your head up high.
I told you, didn't I? You've got us with you.
Don't get all stupid gung-ho about this war business, okay? Just do what you need to do to get this crap over with.
Thank you, everyone.
Rose,
We just
what are you
heard.
doing here?
That's awful. Can't you just sit out this war?
They'll use you for all you're worth, and when you're done, they'll still probably kill Lady Alicia.
I'm going.
Really?
We all know that the charges against Lady Alicia are a load of hog's wallop. We're heading out to Lady Lake to petition them directly.
That's right. Surely the Council will not be able to ignore the voices of so many citizens.
So please, don't give up hope!
Just promise you'll come back.
We'll be waiting for you, gentle shepherd.
Thanks, everyone. I'll be back.
This is interesting too, kind of a half-formed thought that I have, but I think there's something interesting in the idea that, like, when Seray's purity is, not in question and reliable, then he also therefore has the freedom to just explore the world and go where his heart takes him and cultivate himself as a shepherd, which also corresponds with that open world exploration and just enjoying the big wide open universe of the game that we were talking about last time. And yet, when Seray's purity is in question and he risks kind of losing the authentic essence of his character, because that's what they explained earlier, malevolence is kind of not believing in what it is you're doing in the right way. That's also when he's kind of drawn in through this bullying and blackmailing and threatening into serving in a much more like directed and linear confrontation of the kind that's less about exploring the world and more about like the directed conflict of war that you would expect in more of a like linear old school JRPG.
Why are these things happening?
And this time, we're against the humans. And it's a war, which makes it even worse.
Yes. We may hurt people during the process, just trying to get them to stop fighting. That may cause emotional pain for Saray, which in turn may create malevolence.
How could that be? If that's true, then the chance of a shepherd not being affected by malevolence is about as small as a pinhole.
That's what it means to get involved with humans. And that is the way of the shepherd.
If only he could forget about Alicia like a snap of a finger.
There's no way he can.
I know. That's exactly why he became a shepherd, right?
Yes.
I guess I need to prepare myself.
This is an interesting point of contrast with Tales of the Abyss too, because Tales of the Abyss is also colored by war between two nations. But in that context, it's very much like trying to serve the prophecy of the world that ultimately promises salvation, and the people somewhat wrongly, or at least myopically, believe that the war is necessary in order to bring that prophecy about, so they're kind of seeking salvation through war. Whereas here, it's almost the opposite, like war is just represented from the get-go as senseless and begetting just total chaos, which then begets malevolence, and is kind of the antithesis of salvation.
Today's lesson is about bonus skills triggered by elemental unions. If a group union is vertical, you can say an elemental union is horizontal.
Unlike a group union, you can activate an elemental union with as few as 2 skills. so long as they're placed side by side.
Since there's 10 groups, does that mean you can put anywhere between 2 and 10 skills together?
Yeah. Depending on the number of skills you have lined up, the effects will change. You can even duplicate the same effects if you want.
So, like, if you have 2 each of the non-elemental skills, attack and Rangus equipped,
You'll get 2 Elemental Union 2 bonus skills, reducing non-elemental damage by 20% instead of 10. Not only that, but you'll get 2 stack 2 effects on top of that.
But you need to be careful. If you decide to equip just one of the third non-elemental skill, Blood,
The bonus skill for Elemental Union 3 will activate, but the 2 Elemental Union 2 effects will both disappear.
so for Elemental Union bonus skills, it first checks the total length of the combo, and then calculates how many of that combo to activate?
Yep, bonus skills are beneficial, but you have to really start thinking things through if you want to optimize your strengths.
It probably won't end well if you just use different equipment together blindly. So think carefully about what kind of equipment you want to use beforehand.
So, could you have an item where all 4 slots are the same skill in a 4-stack? Or an item that, just by itself, triggers an Elemental Union 4 bonus?
That's right. With proper item fusion and equipment coordination, you can draw out enormous power from skills, far beyond their basic effects. And there's one important announcement to be made.
Next week again, huh?
This is the last lesson.
What?
Really?
I think that if I remember right in my last playthrough, when I was going through it on hard, for all that I've been talking about the complexity of the combat system, I think that skit was what inspired me to really go into the little jag that I had of diving into the meta of optimizing for skills and getting the right skills on all the equipment, because they do at this point like probably 10 hours into the game or something, so we've been playing for a while, but now they do kind of explain the virtue of skills and sort of show you a path to taking advantage of that, where you can really sort of see, as Lila and Edna are lecturing about it, like, oh yeah, if I get all these bonus skills to stack, I could make a pretty beefy and almost unfair character with all that equipment. And then when they talk about, oh yeah, if you get the skill set just right, you can trigger a lot of that stuff just with a single piece of equipment. That really made me feel like it was possible, because I started thinking, oh, well, if I can just get a bonus on one piece of equipment, then that means I won't have to worry about always, like playing 4-dimensional chess in my head whenever I decide if it's worth it to swap one piece of equipment on a character out for another. So it did seem possible, which is why I tried it. I think in practice, part of what's challenging about it is, you'll notice so far the game has not really been grindy at all, even less grindy, I think, than Symphonia and Dawn of the New Worlds. I think that's because a lot of the grindiness is relegated in Zestiria to that skill mining that you have to do, for want of a better word, where you farm equipment in order to get like stuff with the right skills, and then you have to fuse like the right different pieces of equipment with the right complementary skills in order to get like the right skills on a weapon or piece of equipment coming out of that. And so like it seems simple in theory when it's presented in this lecture, and like the basic mechanics aren't that hard, but actually getting everything lined up on the equipment just so in order to trigger the things that you want takes a lot more iteration and patience than you might expect. So not to say it's not worthwhile, and as I'm thinking more about it, it did feel really rewarding to ultimately get those bonus skills, and they do get pretty bonkers in terms of what they let the characters do, but does definitely require first an investment in understanding what they're even saying in the first place, especially because, again, remember, we've been introduced to these skills hours and hours ago. Only now are we getting these lectures that I at least think bring them into like further clarity and relief. And then also you have to be willing to like invest the time and effort in actually bringing that to fruition. Which, if you're in the mood for that, probably not the worst exercise in the world, but especially for a stream like this, maybe not the optimal one. Speaking of optimization. think I'm heading in the right direction. Nope, super not. Glaven Basin is down where we were before. Don't know why it ended up spinning us out this way. Although maybe I just wandered in the wrong direction while I was thinking about other stuff. At least the map isn't that big. And I think right now it looks as if they might have moved monsters from it. Nope. It was a pure fantasy. Oh, we can go around them.
I remember this place was in the Celestial Record. Don't get careless. Be gone! Those ones get him! Right! Yeah! Be gone! Yeah!
Clear shot, pretty good, right?
Tiger's Blade! You were quite strong, but we're no pushovers either.
Looking like a couple of squirrels. I was hoping there'd be a skit about them. And rough. Glad I checked before wandering further in the other direction.
Victory to the Rolance Empire! Charge! Show them what we're made of!
That must be it.
Do not lose sight of what you believe to be true and good in your heart.
You don't need to worry so much about me. I'll be fine.
Well, that's an interesting directive for Lila to give Saray to don't lose sight of what you believe to be true and good in your heart. So when they talk about that sort of belief being central to purity of heart as opposed to giving into malevolence, it almost seems like, well, that standard of purity is an absolute truth. Like, different people can believe different things to be good in their heart and follow those, and as long as they truly believe that, it maintains their purity. So it's like that interesting dual perspective, which I think is a coherent perspective, just kind of an unusual one, I think, especially for a story like this, where there is an objective moral reality to the world, but it actually allows for the possibility that different people can believe and abide by different moral frameworks and still each be morally good according to the overall objective moral universe of the world. We can definitely keep an eye on that and unpack it a little more and talk about it as we get further into the story here. Rangus. Speaking of the Rangus skill. I wish I had the like the skill grid in my head of which did what. Although Saray's vest has Rangus equipped already, so if we give it another one, that ought to give it one of those stack bonuses for free. That much I can understand and execute on the fly. Boy, these are some melancholic strings we have going in the background.
Shepard.
And Lucas?
Setting up an ambush on the right flank. Come back here, Shepard. You will be leading the charge front and center with the... Hey, Shepard, obey my orders. Have you forgotten that this is my battlefield?
What I have to do does not change. No matter whose battlefield it is.
What can one brat like him even hope to accomplish? Have the Chancellors gone daft? Come, we're going too!
Saray clearly answers to a higher power.
I can sense the ancient tongue. We're near one.
Monolith, you say? Oh, monolith. Yeah, these are the skills, or whatever the correct term is for them, that I was talking about earlier when I was saying I was holding down the guard button because I was used to getting perks from it. Hopefully we'll get those soon. I forget how you unlock them. Oh, we already have a bunch of these. They might have different skills, though. I don't know. I'll get one. Give it to Saray. You might have some cool bonus skills at this point, just by wandering around and messing with things. Yeah, look at that. How do we get to the skill? Shoot. There we go. Yeah, we're so close to one of the full columns. We just need to add focus to one of his things. Well, since that is close to being within our reach anyway, I can at least make a mental note to keep my eye out for something that'll give him focus. Without, and this is important, taking away from the other ones that are contributing to the chain, which I remember as the hard part of doing it.
Time for battle!
Lizard Man is the happy flame of a soldier.
Let our guard down and it's over.
Disappear! Dragon Fang! Tiger Blade! Dragon Fang! Blade of Light! Ice Reaver! Go! Ready? Let's keep it up! Hold on, everyone! Well done! Be gone! No escape! How's this? Everyone okay?
The sad music continues even in battle.
Weapons ready! Going down! Blade Fang! Let's keep it up!
Interesting choice in music. I think another game might have like a raucous, sweeping battle theme for a big multinational conflict like this. But I think this somber score does a really good job of quietly emphasizing everything that the Seraphim were saying about how senseless and kind of monstrous war is. There are chests down here, I remember that much.
Steady your nerves!
Leave them alone and they'll just call for more.
Ah, monsters that can bring in backup. The classic.
The ruins are calling me.
Let's go ahead and clock that in the past how Lila in the armatized mode actually gives a read on the stats of the monsters you're fighting. Super helpful. What about the other one? Alright, well that's something at least. Anything Anything else over here? I remember Saray got a new art a while ago. I forgot to actually equip that to him. Rending Gale. Let's give that a try.
We should be able to spot Lucas's team from the top of that cliff.
Yeah, the enemy will never notice Saray.
The mercenaries' flank attack was a failure. Fall back to rejoin the main forces. Hurry while there's still time!
What?
You're just going to abandon Lucas's team? If we don't take advantage of their sacrifice, more troops are gonna die out there. But they're still fighting out there! Welcome to war, kid. Let's go!
He's just doing a soldier's duty. It seems cruel, but you can't hold it against him. Dang it!
Feels weird to hear a protagonist in one of these games say "dang it" instead of "damn it," since that's the usual curse.
It's pointless.
The air is overflowing with people's
But
anger
very on
and
brand for
hatred.
Saray, obviously.
That's why it feels hard to breathe. Battlefields are the cauldrons where malevolence is brewed.
There!
Going?
You bet. I'm counting on you guys. Loose Rob Roulette!
Pretty awesome.
Don't worry. I'll go easy on you.
Literally, I suppose, since he doesn't want to kill them.
Get out of my way!
Oh man. These guys are like glass cannons against the Armadas.
Saray, slip up and you're done for.
I know!
Oh dear. Saray sure looks angry.
Oh, we don't want that.
Blame him.
Break on through! Break down! Break on through! Burst! Blue flash! Break down! That's your assault! Break down! Burst! Ocean flash! Break down! Break on through! Burst! Ocean flash! That's your assault! Ocean flash!
It's hard to feel good about mowing down this quantity of soldiers, especially when none of them is really a threat to us in the Armadas. Which I'm sure, given the theming of this battlefield, is a big part of the point.
How could he do this much with just a sword?
What the hell? Something blocked me!
Like a holy warrior. Jesus the Warlord.
What's going on here?
The shepherd!
Step aside.
Archers! This can't be!
can see how easily someone with the power of gods would be mistaken for a demon.
Is this the shepherd's true power?
Even if they're doing what they believe is
Let's
necessary.
go.
Yeah.
Retreat! Troops of Rolance!
What the hell? There's a voice in my head!
Who the hell are you?
I won't ask again! Retreat!
Jesus.
It's a demon! Hyland has demons on their side!
Take my lines away, don't you?
Run! Run!
I'm really glad you're safe. Saray, they'll understand someday.
That's right.
Thanks.
Cold comfort.
Even if it is just a pat on the back.
Gonna cry?
Nope.
Brutal.
We're not finished yet.
What's happening? Fall back! Retreat!
Ooh. Pretty impressive, but pretty haunting. Inspiring terror like we talked about before.
It's over.
Not yet. We still have to quell the hellions that were created here.
Saray.
Well, I guess I'll stick with you just this once. Thank you, Mikleo.
Oh, wow.
Ready, Mikleo? Raise the bar.
Waste no time, why don't you?
How's this? Be gone! Strike! Hang on, everyone! Forward! Ready? Strike! Yeah! Ha! Be gone!
Victory is
I'm gonna check to see if there's a save point. There is. It looks like it's pretty far back there, but it might not actually be that far back there. You can probably feel that we're headed towards a climax in this area. It's a pretty big one and a pretty good one, but I actually think, in terms of where the game goes next, it might be fun to start the Friday night stream with that climax and then roll into the aftermath, as opposed to grinding through to see the climax and then having to pause it and start with the aftermath on Friday. So I am going to go back and save, and then we can dive in next time with a vengeance. Oh. Well, I said that, but I guess the game has other ideas. Well, joke's on them. I don't need a save point because I'm just gonna put my PS5 to sleep, and I don't imagine I'll be playing anything on it between now and Friday, so that'll be all good. I'm gonna call it here. This will be, trust me, I'm pretty sure based on my decent memory of the game that this will be a good place to pick up on Friday. So look forward to that. But a great session. Really enjoyed all the conversation. Shout out to you, Grail. Appreciate you not only hanging out, but also contributing to the conversation and study of these games. That's really what I think these streams are all about as much as anything. The real life JRPG parties that we put together between my playing and commentary and all the thoughts and great insights from everyone in the chat. And those silent viewers too, you mean a lot. So truly thank you all. We covered a lot of really interesting ground, I think. Saw Marlind through its plague days. Learned a lot about not just the duty of the shepherd, but also now the burden of the shepherd, his relationship, or maybe lack thereof, with Alicia, and what pulls them together, but also pushes them apart. And learned a lot of key stuff about what Malevolence actually is and is not, which I think will serve us well in the upcoming motions of this plot. And saw Saray get sucked into a war, helping us to better understand sort of the hierarchy of needs when it comes to a shepherd redeeming humanity and reshaping the world. It's pretty interesting language too. I didn't stop to reflect on this, but how Lila said pretty bluntly how the shepherd has the ability to reshape the world. So it's interesting in the context of this interactive story and the agency that we have as players, and also the role of Saray as this kind of destined hero, how not only do his abilities extend to being able to redeem humanity and quell Hellions, but also remake the world how he wants, or maybe even not how he wants, depending on whether or not he kind of stays in control of his emotions and keeps his intentions aligned with his actions and everything else that we reflected on throughout this leg of the journey. So, got some big stuff coming up. We're still just getting started, despite rounding on our 12 of the JRPG, but it is, after all, a JRPG. It's been a real pleasure, everyone. Go and check out that podcast I mentioned by Dan Hughes, all about the metagame of Pokemon as it was introduced in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, if you get a chance. They're tight, thoughtful reflections. I think it clocks in as just about like 12 and a half minutes, so no excuse. Listen, tune in. He's already got another really great one teed up for this coming week, which I think you'll enjoy too. So check that out. I'm going to get back to working on this article on Tales of Symphonia I've been talking about, so hopefully that'll be out soon, and then you can look forward to more articles accompanying these streams of Tales of Praxis in the coming weeks, if not days. So, can't wait to see what comes next. It's a pleasure to be experiencing it with you all. I'm Aaron Suduko, the founder of With the Terrible Fate. Hope you game well in the meantime, and I hope to see you back here at the same time on Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Cheers, everybody. Until then.